Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, she found it while dusting the shelves, a thick novel carved out in the middle, hiding a yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten in shaky cursive. He said you'd never find this. Don't trust the man in the hallway. The small town of Millfield, Oregon, had always been a place where people left their doors unlocked. It was the kind of community where everyone knew everyone else's business, where the most exciting event of the year was the Autumn Harvest Festival. Rebecca Thornton had lived there her entire 43 years, inheriting her grandmother's Victorian home on Sycamore Street after the elderly woman passed away in 2017. Rebecca was a librarian at the local high school, quiet, methodical, and well-liked. She had never married, devoting her life instead to her career and to caring for her grandmother in her final years. The sprawling 3-story house had always felt too large for just one person, but Rebecca couldn't bear to part with it. It held too many memories. Every Sunday, Rebecca would spend the morning cleaning. It was a ritual she had maintained for years. She would dust each shelf, each ornament, each book in the extensive library her grandmother had cultivated over decades. The library was Rebecca's favorite room, walls lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a bay window overlooking the garden, and her grandmother's antique reading chair positioned just so to catch the afternoon light. On this particular Sunday in late November, as the first snow of the season dusted the ground outside, Rebecca was working her way through the classics section. She pulled down a weathered copy of Moby Dick, a book she was certain neither she nor her grandmother had ever actually read. It felt unusually light in her hands. When she opened it, she discovered why. The middle of the book had been hollowed out, creating a small compartment. Inside was an envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with wax that had long since cracked. Rebecca's hands trembled slightly as she opened it and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. He said you'd never find this. Don't trust the man in the hallway. The handwriting was unmistakably her grandmother's, though shakier than Rebecca remembered, perhaps written in her final months. The message made no sense. What man, which hallway, and who had told her grandmother that Rebecca would never find the note? Rebecca sat in the reading chair, turning the paper over in her hands, searching for more information. There was nothing else, just those 2 cryptic sentences. She thought back to her grandmother's final year. Martha Thornton had been 92 when she died, her mind still remarkably sharp until the very end. Or so Rebecca had thought. In those last months, her grandmother had occasionally mentioned seeing someone in the house, a tall figure glimpsed in doorways or at the end of corridors. Rebecca had assumed it was confusion, perhaps early signs of dementia that had otherwise remained hidden. The doctor had suggested it might be shadows playing tricks on an elderly woman's eyes. Rebecca had never given it much more thought. Until now. Rebecca spent the rest of that Sunday searching through the house, looking for any other hidden messages or clues about what her grandmother might have meant. She found nothing unusual. That night she had trouble sleeping. Every creak of the old house, every shadow cast by moonlight through the curtains, seemed ominous in a way they never had before. The following day, Rebecca called in sick to work, something she rarely did. She needed to understand what her grandmother had been trying to tell her. She started by examining old photographs, reading through her grandmother's journals, and calling a few of Martha's old friends who were still alive. No one remembered Martha mentioning any fears or concerns about someone in the house. Her journals contain nothing unusual, just daily observations about the weather, visits from Rebecca, and notes about her garden. The photographs showed a happy, aging woman, surrounded by books and flowers, and occasionally her granddaughter. On Tuesday, Rebecca ventured into the attic. It was a space she rarely entered, dusty, cramped, and filled with forgotten belongings accumulated over generations. She spent hours sifting through old trunks and boxes, finding nothing of interest until, pushed against the far wall under an eave, she discovered a small wooden chest she'd never seen before. Inside were newspaper clippings, yellowed with age, dating back to 1958. They detailed the unsolved murder of a young woman named Alina Simmons, who had been found strangled in her home just 3 blocks from where Rebecca now lived. According to the articles, Alina had reported seeing a strange man lurking near her property in the weeks before her death. Police had never identified a suspect. What connection could this possibly have to her grandmother's warning? Martha would have been in her 30s when this happened. Had she known Alina, the articles didn't mention her. That evening, as dusk fell and shadows lengthened across the house, Rebecca found herself paying special attention to the hallways, the upstairs corridor that connected the bedrooms, the wide hallway downstairs that led from the front door to the kitchen, the narrow passage between the library and the sunroom. Had her grandmother seen something in one of these spaces, someone who shouldn't have been there? Detective Michael Harmon had worked for the Millfield Police Department for 22 years. When Rebecca walked into the station on Wednesday morning with the letter and newspaper clippings, he invited her into his office with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Millfield hadn't seen a murder since 1994, a domestic violence case that had been solved within hours. "So you think your grandmother's note from, when was it written?" he asked, examining the paper carefully. "I'm not sure exactly. She died in 2017, but this could have been written any time before that," Rebecca replied. "And you think it might be connected to an unsolved murder from over 60 years ago?" The detective's tone was gentle but doubtful. "I know how it sounds," Rebecca admitted, "but my grandmother wasn't prone to delusions. If she wrote this warning, she had a reason." Detective Harmon promised to look into the Alina Simmons case, though he cautioned Rebecca not to expect much. Evidence would be long gone, witnesses dead, or memories faded beyond reliability. As Rebecca left the police station, snow began to fall again, thick, heavy flakes that muffled the world. She thought about stopping by the library to research the Simmons case herself, but decided against it. She wanted to get home before dark. The house felt different now, charged with an energy that was part mystery, part fear. Rebecca found herself avoiding the hallways when possible, moving quickly through them when she couldn't. That night, she slept with her bedroom door locked for the first time. On Thursday, Rebecca received a call from Detective Harmon. He had pulled the old case files on Alina Simmons and found something interesting. Martha Thornton's name appeared in the witness statements. She had been interviewed because she lived nearby and walked past Alina's house on her way to work each day. "According to the file, your grandmother reported seeing a tall man in a dark coat standing across the street from Alina's house on several occasions," Detective Harmon explained. She couldn't identify him, said he always kept his face turned away. Rebecca felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter weather. Did they ever figure out who he was? No, there were several reports of a similar figure around town in those days, but no one could provide a clear description. The case went cold after a few months. That night, Rebecca dreamed of a tall figure standing at the end of the upstairs hallway, face obscured by shadow. She woke with a start at 3:17 a.m., heart pounding. The house was silent around her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was moving through it, walking slowly from room to room, searching. The next morning, Rebecca called a locksmith and had new locks installed on all the exterior doors. She also contacted a security company about installing cameras. The technician couldn't come until Monday, leaving Rebecca to spend the weekend alone in the house, jumping at every unexpected sound. On Saturday morning, Detective Harmon called again. He had been digging deeper into the old files and discovered a connection Rebecca hadn't known about. "Your grandmother wasn't just a witness because she lived nearby," he explained. "She and Alina Simmons were friends, close friends, according to some of the statements." "She never mentioned an Alina to me," Rebecca said, trying to recall if she'd ever heard the name before finding the newspaper clippings. "There's more," Harmon continued. "After Alina's murder, the police interviewed a man named Robert Caldwell. He was Martha's boyfriend at the time, though they broke up shortly after the investigation. The detectives were interested in him because he matched the general description of the man seen lurking around Alina's house, but they couldn't find any evidence linking him to the crime." Rebecca sat down heavily on her grandmother's reading chair. "My grandmother never mentioned a Robert either." "It was a long time ago," Harmon reminded her. "And if they broke up around the time of the murder, maybe it wasn't a relationship she wanted to remember." After hanging up, Rebecca returned to the attic. She searched through more boxes until she found a small album of photographs she hadn't examined before. In it were pictures of her grandmother as a young woman, often with another young woman who, based on the newspaper photos, must have been Alina Simmons. And in several images, standing beside her grandmother, was a tall, lean man with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. On the back of one photo, in her grandmother's neat handwriting, "Martha, Alina, and Robert, spring 1958. Rebecca stared at the man's face, trying to reconcile this smiling figure with the ominous warning in her grandmother's letter. Had Martha suspected Robert of killing her friend? Is that why they had broken up? And if so, why had she never gone to the police with her suspicions? That night the snow turned to freezing rain, coating the world in a glassy shell. The old house creaked and groaned under the weight of ice forming on its roof and eaves. Rebecca sat in the library, surrounded by her grandmother's books, the hollow Moby Dick on the table beside her, trying to piece together a mystery decades in the making. Just after midnight, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. Rebecca fumbled for the flashlight she had started keeping nearby. As she switched it on, the beam caught movement at the end of the hallway outside the library door, a tall shadow there and gone in an instant. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. She told herself it was nothing, a trick of the light, her own imagination fueled by days of dwelling on her grandmother's cryptic warning. But her hands shook as she dialed Detective Harmon's number. He arrived 30 minutes later, navigating treacherous roads to reach her. He searched the house thoroughly, finding no signs of forced entry, no evidence that anyone had been there besides Rebecca. The hallway where she thought she'd seen the figure revealed nothing unusual. "The mind can play tricks, especially when we're already on edge," Harmon said gently. "But I'll have a patrol car drive by regularly tonight, just to be safe." Rebecca thanked him, embarrassed now at having called so late over what was likely nothing. After he left, she made herself a cup of tea and tried to calm her nerves. The power was still out, the house illuminated only by candles and her flashlight. As she sipped her tea, a new thought occurred to her. What if the man in the hallway wasn't a literal warning about an intruder? What if it was something else, a metaphor perhaps, or a reference to something specific that only Martha would understand? Rebecca returned to the library and began examining the books more carefully. Were there other hollow volumes, other hidden messages? She worked methodically through the shelves until, behind a row of detective novels, she found something taped to the back of the bookcase, a small key. The key didn't match any lock in the house that Rebecca knew of. She tried it on desk drawers, jewelry boxes, even the small chest from the attic. Nothing. Dawn was breaking when Rebecca, exhausted and frustrated, remembered the old garden shed. It had been her grandmother's sanctuary where she potted plants and stored her gardening tools. Rebecca rarely went inside. Bundled against the cold, she made her way across the ice-covered yard to the weathered wooden structure. The key fit perfectly in the padlock. Inside, everything looked normal at first glance. Shelves of clay pots, bags of soil, gardening implements hanging neatly on the wall. But when Rebecca moved a stack of empty planters, she discovered a loose board in the floor. Beneath it was a small metal box. Inside was a leather-bound journal, not her grandmother's usual type with its floral cover, but something more austere. The first entry was dated June 14, 1958, 2 weeks after Alina Simmons was murdered. I know it was Robert. I have no proof, nothing I can take to the police, but I know. The way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching, the arguments they had that he made me promise never to mention. The night he came home with scratches on his face that he couldn't explain. I've ended things with him, told him never to contact me again. But I see him sometimes, watching the house from across the street. I'm afraid of what he might do. The entries continued for months, detailing Martha's growing paranoia, her sense that Robert was following her, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. The final entry was dated nearly a year after the first. I saw him in the hallway last night, standing outside my bedroom door just watching. When I screamed, he vanished. The police found no signs of forced entry, said I must have been dreaming, but I know what I saw. I'm leaving Millfield tomorrow, going to stay with my cousin in Seattle until I figure out what to do next. Rebecca knew her grandmother had indeed lived in Seattle for several years in the late 1950s and early 1960s. She had always assumed it was for work. Martha had returned to Millfield eventually, married Rebecca's grandfather, and lived what seemed to be a happy, normal life. Had she ever told him about Robert, about her suspicions regarding Alina's murder? When Detective Harmon arrived later that morning to check on her, Rebecca showed him the journal. He read it carefully, his expression grave. This is compelling, but after so many years, he trailed off. I know, Rebecca said, there's no way to prove anything now. Actually, Harmon said slowly, the Alina Simmons case was never officially closed, and forensic techniques have advanced considerably since 1958. If evidence from the original crime scene was preserved, there might be DNA we could test now. Over the next few weeks, Detective Harmon reopened the investigation. To everyone's surprise, the original evidence had been meticulously preserved, including skin cells found under Alina's fingernails, presumably from when she fought her attacker. A modern DNA analysis was ordered. Meanwhile, Rebecca continued to search through her grandmother's possessions, finding more photographs of Robert Caldwell, more entries in various journals that hinted at her suspicions and fears. She learned that Robert had died in 1997, never having married or had children. He had lived his entire life in Millfield, working as a night janitor at the high school, the very same building where Rebecca now worked as a librarian. When the DNA results finally came back, They confirmed what Martha Thornton had suspected all those years ago. The genetic material found under Alina Simmons' fingernails was consistent with being from a close male relative of Robert Caldwell, most likely Robert himself, though without his DNA for direct comparison, they couldn't be absolutely certain. The case of Alina Simmons was officially solved 65 years after her murder. A press conference was held, the story made headlines in the local paper, and for a brief time, Rebecca found herself at the center of attention in Millfield. But questions remained that would never be answered. Had Robert somehow gained access to Martha's house in her final years? Had she truly seen him in the hallway, or was it a manifestation of an old fear resurfacing as her mind began to fail? And why hide the warning in a hollow book rather than telling Rebecca directly? The house on Sycamore Street feels different now. Rebecca still lives there, still maintains her grandmother's library, still dusts each book with care every Sunday. But she understands now that buildings can hold more than just the people who inhabit them. They hold secrets, memories, fears, echoes of the past that never quite fade away. Sometimes, late at night, she thinks she catches movement at the end of a hallway, a tall shadow that vanishes when she turns to look directly at it. But Rebecca isn't afraid anymore. She knows now what her grandmother wanted her to understand, that some truths hide in plain sight, waiting for the right person to uncover them. That justice, though delayed, can still be served, that the dead do speak, if only we know how to listen. And every night before she goes to bed, Rebecca whispers a quiet thank you to the empty hallway, grateful for the warning hidden in a hollow book that finally brought peace to two women separated by time, but united in their search for truth. Crime 2, the apartment had 2 bedrooms, but behind the linen closet there was a narrow staircase leading to a hidden room. Inside, a mattress, camera equipment, and a corkboard covered in surveillance photos. Every single picture was of her. Olivia Bennett moved to Portland, Oregon in early March of 2018. 26 years old with a degree in graphic design and a new job at a mid-sized marketing firm, she was excited for the fresh start. Her previous life in Minneapolis had grown stale. The same friends since college, the same coffee shops, the same seasonal depression that arrived like clockwork each November. Portland promised something different. The city's perpetual dampness and gray skies didn't bother her. She found them comforting, like a soft blanket wrapped around the cityscape. The apartment on Northeast Alberta Street seemed perfect. A restored 1920s building with hardwood floors, high ceilings, and large windows that filled the space with diffused light even on the cloudiest days. The rent was slightly above her budget, but the property manager, a middle-aged woman named Diane, seemed eager to have her. She offered Olivia a modest discount if she signed a year-long lease on the spot. Olivia didn't hesitate. "You'll love this neighborhood," Diane had said, handing over the keys. "Alberta's got such character, and this building is very secure. That's important for a young woman living alone." The building had 8 units. Olivia's was on the 3rd floor at the end of the hallway. According to the lease, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit with approximately 800 square feet. Enough space for Olivia and her modest collection of furniture, books, and art supplies. For the first few months, everything was perfect. Olivia established routines. Mornings at Hart Coffee before work, evening walks through the Alberta Arts District when the weather allowed, weekends exploring the city's neighborhoods and surrounding wilderness. She made friends at work, joined a weekly figure drawing class at a local studio, and even went on a few unmemorable dates arranged through apps. It was in late June when she first noticed something wasn't right. She'd been living in the apartment for almost 4 months when she began feeling a strange presence. Not anything supernatural. Olivia didn't believe in ghosts, but something more unsettling, the feeling that her private space had been disturbed. Little things at first, a chair pulled slightly away from her dining table, a book on her coffee table when she was certain she'd left it on the bedside table, her toothbrush damp when she knew she hadn't used it since morning. She blamed forgetfulness, stress from the new job, the disorientation of living in a new city. She even wondered if she might be sleepwalking, though she had no history of it. Then one evening in July, she came home to find a mug of tea on her kitchen counter. Still warm, she knew with absolute certainty she hadn't made it that morning. That night, she called her friend Megan from the parking lot of a nearby grocery store. Maybe maintenance came in, Megan suggested over the phone. Don't they have to give notice, though? They do, Olivia confirmed, and I haven't requested any repairs. Change your locks, Megan advised, and get a security system, one of those doorbell cameras or something. The following day, Olivia approached her landlord about changing the locks. Diane seemed annoyed by the request, but eventually agreed, though she insisted on keeping a copy of the new key. For emergencies only, she assured Olivia. A week later, Olivia installed a small wireless security camera in her living room, positioned to capture most of the apartment's main space. The camera uploaded footage to her phone, allowing her to check in remotely throughout the day. For 3 weeks, the footage showed nothing unusual. Just the empty apartment while she was at work and her own movements when she was home. She began to relax, convinced she had been imagining things. Until August 16th. Olivia was at work, scrolling through her phone during lunch break when she decided to check the security feed. What she saw made her stomach drop. A man was standing in her living room. He was tall and thin, wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt. His back was to the camera as he moved slowly around the space, examining her possessions. He picked up a framed photograph of Olivia with her parents, studied it for a moment, then carefully replaced it. Olivia watched, paralyzed, as the man walked toward her bedroom, disappearing from the camera's view. With shaking hands, she called the police. Officers arrived at her apartment within 20 minutes. Olivia met them in the lobby, unable to bring herself to go upstairs alone. When they entered the apartment, it was empty, no sign of forced entry, nothing visibly disturbed or missing. The officers took her statement and reviewed the security footage. They agreed someone had definitely been in her apartment, but were puzzled by how they had gained entry. "Do you know this man?" one officer asked, replaying the footage. Olivia shook her head. "I couldn't see his face." "Who has keys to your apartment?" "Just me and the property manager, Diane." The officers spoke with Diane, who insisted she had not entered the apartment and had not authorized anyone else to do so. She provided a list of maintenance staff, just 2 men who handled repairs for all the properties she managed. Neither matched the build of the man in the footage. The officers filed a report and advised Olivia to change her locks again, this time using a locksmith not connected to the property management company. They also suggested additional security measures, more cameras, a door alarm, perhaps even moving to a new location if possible. That night, Olivia stayed with a coworker. The next day, she had new locks installed and added cameras in her bedroom and near the front door. She considered breaking her lace and moving, but the financial penalty would have been severe: 3 months' rent plus forfeiture of her security deposit. Instead, she decided to stay vigilant. For 2 weeks, she checked the camera feeds obsessively. Nothing unusual appeared, no mysterious visitors, no objects moved out of place. She was beginning to think the incident had been isolated, perhaps a maintenance worker who had entered the wrong apartment, when she noticed something odd about her linen closet. It was a Sunday afternoon. Olivia was changing her bed sheets when she realized she needed a fresh pillowcase. She went to the hallway linen closet, a narrow space with built-in shelves that ran from floor to ceiling. As she reached for a pillowcase on the top shelf, she dropped it. It fell behind the lowest shelf into what should have been just the back wall of the closet, but instead of hearing it hit the baseboard, she heard it fall further, as if into a space beyond. Puzzled, Olivia knelt down and peered into the gap between the bottom shelf and the floor. There was darkness, but also what looked like a deeper space behind. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into the gap. The light revealed what appeared to be a small passageway. The back panel of the closet had been cut away near the floor, creating an opening just large enough for a person to crawl through. Olivia's heart raced. She backed away from the closet, nearly tripping over her own feet. She called the police again. This time, the investigation was more thorough. Officers removed the bottom shelves of the linen closet to reveal a crude opening cut into the drywall. Behind it was a narrow passage that led to a small staircase, hidden between the walls of Olivia's apartment and the adjacent unit. The staircase led to a room that didn't appear on any building plans, a space approximately 8 feet by 10 feet that existed in what should have been dead space between the third floor and the roof. What they found inside the room was the stuff of nightmares. A thin mattress on the floor, a small table with camera equipment including a laptop connected to several external hard drives, a mini refrigerator containing water bottles and energy bars, a plastic bucket that had clearly been used as a toilet, and covering one entire wall, a corkboard filled with photographs of Olivia. Olivia entering her apartment, Olivia sleeping in her bed, Olivia changing clothes, Olivia cooking dinner, Olivia watching television, Olivia crying on the phone during a difficult conversation with her mother. Hundreds of intimate moments captured without her knowledge. The police investigation revealed that the hidden room had been constructed years earlier, possibly when the building underwent renovations in 2010. The current property manager, Diane, had only been working there for 3 years and claimed no knowledge of the space. Digital forensics found that the camera system in the hidden room had been tapping into Olivia's Wi-Fi network. More disturbingly, they discovered tiny cameras hidden throughout her apartment, in smoke detectors, air vents, even the shower head in her bathroom. The laptop contained thousands of images of Olivia, meticulously organized by date and activity. But it also contained similar folders for 3 previous tenants of the same apartment, dating back to 2012. Most chilling of all, the laptop revealed that live streams of the apartment had been broadcast on obscure corners of the internet, where paying viewers could watch Olivia's private life unfold in real time. Despite extensive investigation, the identity of the man remained elusive. The laptop had been wiped of fingerprints. The building had no security cameras in its hallways or common areas. The few neighbors who were interviewed recalled occasionally hearing footsteps above them, but had assumed it was normal building noise. Olivia moved out immediately, staying first with coworkers and then finding a new apartment across town. She underwent therapy for post-traumatic stress and eventually filed a lawsuit against the property management company. The hidden room was sealed off. The apartment was completely renovated before being rented again. But the man in the gray t-shirt was never found. To this day, in certain online forums where people trade urban legends and true crime stories, users occasionally claim to have been subscribers to the Alberta Street Channel, the name given to the live stream of Olivia's apartment. They describe the thrill of watching someone who had no idea they were being observed. Some even claim to have interacted with the channel's operator, a user who went by the name The Landlord. Investigators have never been able to trace these claims to their sources. The websites that hosted the streams have long since disappeared into the digital ether. Sometimes Olivia still wakes up in the middle of the night, convinced someone is watching her. She keeps her current address private. She regularly sweeps her new apartment for hidden cameras. She's installed the most sophisticated security system she can afford. But she knows the truth that many of us prefer to ignore. The walls that we believe separate us from the outside world are thinner than we think. Privacy is an illusion, and sometimes the monster isn't hiding under the bed. It's hiding behind the walls, watching, waiting, collecting moments of our lives that were never meant to be shared. The room that wasn't on the list may have been sealed away, but somewhere out there, the man who built it almost certainly found another wall to cut through, another life to secretly observe. Another tenant who doesn't yet realize they're being watched. Crime 3, she thought birds were nesting inside the chimney, but when the mason pulled out the blockage, he found a rusted tin filled with dozens of keys, some labeled, some wrapped in hair. One tag read, "Basement lock, do not open." Marion Walsh had lived in the old colonial house on Maple Street for just 3 months when she first heard the scratching. At night, as she lay in bed reading, the sounds would filter down from the chimney, soft at first, then more insistent, like something trapped or perhaps something trying to get in. At 42, Marion was starting over. After her divorce from Paul, her husband of 15 years, she had packed up their Chicago apartment and moved to the small town of Whispering Pines, Vermont, where real estate was cheaper and memories couldn't follow her around every corner. The house on Maple Street had been a foreclosure, built in 1887 according to the property records. It needed work, but Marion saw this as an opportunity, a project to lose herself in. "Probably just some birds," she told her sister Claire during their weekly phone call. "The chimney hasn't been used in years. The home inspector said I should get it cleaned before winter if I wanted to use the fireplace." It was early September when Marion finally called a local mason, Roy Keller, a soft-spoken man in his 60s who had lived in Whispering Pines his entire life. Roy arrived on a Tuesday morning, wearing faded overalls and carrying a metal toolbox that looked almost as old as he was. "Old houses like this," Roy said as he inspected the brick fireplace in Marion's living room, "they hold on to things, secrets mostly." He smiled when he said it, but there was something in his pale blue eyes that made Marion wonder if he knew something about the house that she didn't. The scratching had grown louder over the past week. Sometimes Marion would wake in the middle of the night, convinced someone was in the house. She'd lie perfectly still, listening, until the sound inevitably led her back to the chimney. Roy set up a dropped cloth and began working. He used a small camera on a flexible cord to peer up into the darkness. "There's definitely a blockage," he confirmed. "But it's not what I'd expect from birds or squirrels. It's more deliberate." 2 hours later, Roy called Marion back into the living room. The floor was covered in soot and brick dust, and Roy's face was streaked with black. But it was the object sitting on the dropped cloth that caught Marion's attention, a rusted tin box about the size of a thick hardcover book. "Found this wedged in there," Roy said quietly. "Someone put it there on purpose, bricked it into a section of the chimney that hadn't been used even when the house was first built. Hidden compartment." Marion knelt beside the box. It was sealed with what looked like decades of grime, the metal corroded in places. "Should I open it?" she asked, though she wasn't sure if she was asking Roy or herself. "It's your house now," Roy replied. "Whatever's in there belongs to you." The lid gave way with a grinding sound that sent shivers down Marion's spine. Inside, nestled on a bed of disintegrating velvet, lay dozens of keys, old-fashioned skeleton keys, modern door keys, small padlock keys, even what looked like car keys from the 1950s. Some were bundled together with brittle rubber bands. Others were wrapped meticulously with strands of human hair in different colors: blonde, brown, red, gray. And attached to many were small paper tags, the writing faded but still legible. "My God," whispered Roy, who had moved to look over Marion's shoulder. "I've never seen anything like this." Marion picked up one of the keys, a tarnished brass skeleton key with a tag that read "Basement lock, do not open." The handwriting was tight and precise, almost angry in its deliberation. Something about it made her stomach clench. "Did the house always have a basement?" she asked Roy, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. Roy frowned. "Far as I know, this house only has a crawl space, no basement." That evening, after Roy had left with a promise to return the next day to finish cleaning the chimney, Marion sat at her kitchen table examining the keys. She had arranged them in groups, those with tags, those wrapped in hair, and those that were plain. She had counted 47 keys in total. She took photos of each and began a document on her laptop, cataloging them as meticulously as they had been stored. Other tags read: Garden Shed 1972, Aliner's room, back entrance to Whittier's, Mom's jewelry box, and most disturbingly, where Mike sleeps now. Marion couldn't help but wonder who had hidden these keys and why. Some seemed innocuous enough, normal household keys, but others, particularly those wrapped in hair, suggested something more sinister. And that basement key kept drawing her attention, its warning impossible to ignore. The next morning, Marion did what anyone in the digital age would do. She researched her house's history. The local historical society had digitized many of their records, and the librarian, a woman named Heather Simmons, was eager to help when Marion stopped by. "The Walsh house," Heather mused, her fingers dancing across her keyboard. "Let's see what we can find." According to the records, the house had been built by Thomas Walsh, no relation to Marion, a successful merchant who had lived there with his wife and 3 children until his death in 1912. After that, the house had changed hands several times, most notably belonging to the Whittier family from 1943 to 1988. "The Whittiers," Heather said, leaning forward slightly, her voice dropping. "There was some scandal there, if I remember correctly. Harold Whittier was a respected doctor in town, but there were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Marion asked, thinking about the key labeled "Back Entrance to Whittier's." "Young women going to him for help and then leaving town suddenly. Nothing was ever proven," Heather said. "His wife, Aliner, died in 1976, fell down the stairs, they said. Their son Michael inherited the house but sold it just a few years later and moved away. No one ever heard from him again." Alina's room, where Mike sleeps now. The connections were starting to form in Marion's mind. That afternoon, Marion called a local contractor to inspect her crawl space. The contractor, a woman named Dina, arrived promptly at 3. "Just want to check for water damage or pests," Marion explained, not mentioning the key or her growing suspicion that there might be more to her house than she had initially been told. The crawl space was accessed through a small door in the hallway closet. Dina shone her flashlight into the dark, earthen area and then froze. "Ms. Walsh," she said slowly, "did you know there's a door down there?" Marion felt her heart rate quicken. A door to what? "I'm not sure, but there definitely shouldn't be an interior door in a crawl space." Together they climbed down into the space. The ceiling was low, forcing them to crouch. At the far end, partially hidden behind an old support beam, was a door solid wood with a tarnished brass lock plate. Marion's hand trembled as she withdrew the skeleton key from her pocket, the one labeled "basement lock do not open." It fit perfectly into the lock. "Are you sure you want to do that?" Dina asked, her flashlight beam dancing over the door, that warning on the key tag. "I need to know," Marion said simply, and turned the key. The lock released with a heavy click that seemed to echo in the confined space. The door swung inward with a groan of rusted hinges, revealing a set of narrow wooden stairs descending into darkness. Dina's flashlight illuminated rough stone walls as they carefully made their way down. The air was stale and damp, carrying a faint, unpleasant odor that Marion couldn't quite identify. The basement was small, perhaps 15 feet square, with a packed earth floor and stone walls. It might have been used for cold storage once, but what caught both women's attention was the far wall, where several chains were bolted into the stone at different heights. "Jesus," whispered Dina, her flashlight revealing dark stains on the floor beneath the chains. But it was the small wooden table against the adjacent wall that drew Marion forward. On it lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. Beside it stood a small photograph in a silver frame, a family portrait from what looked like the 1960s. A stern-faced man, a delicate woman with vacant eyes, and a teenage boy with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think we should call the police," Dina said, her voice shaking slightly. Within hours, Marion's house was transformed into a crime scene. Detective Sarah Morris arrived first, followed by a team of evidence technicians. The journal found in the basement belonged to Alina Whittier and detailed years of horror, her husband's treatments for young women in town, her son Michael's growing participation as he entered his teens, and her own helpless complicity. The keys, as it turned out, were trophies taken from victims, from places where crimes had been committed, from rooms where evidence was hidden. The hair wrapped around some of the keys was the final piece of evidence linking the Whittiers to at least 7 disappearances between 1954 and 1976. "What I don't understand," Detective Morris said to Marion 3 days later as they sat in her kitchen, "is why Alina hid the keys and journal in the chimney. If she wanted the truth to come out, why not send them to the police?" "I've been thinking about that," Marion replied, turning a mug of tea between her hands. "From what I read in her journal, I think she was afraid of her husband, of her son, of what would happen to her if they found out she was keeping records. The last entry was dated 2 days before her death." "The fall down the stairs," Morris nodded, "which we now suspect wasn't an accident." "She hid the evidence where she thought they'd never look," Marion continued. Maybe she hoped someone would find it eventually, or maybe it was just her way of not being completely silenced. The investigation continued for months. The chains in the basement matched marks found on bones recovered from 3 different locations around Whispering Pines. DNA extracted from the hair wrapped around the keys helped identify 2 victims whose disappearances had remained unsolved for decades. Harold Whittier had died in 1980 of a heart attack, never facing justice for his crimes. Michael Whittier remained missing, though authorities now had a nationwide search underway. Marion eventually sold the house on Maple Street. She couldn't bring herself to live there knowing what had happened within those walls. But before she left, she placed a small stone marker in the garden, engraved with the names of the women who had been identified. The box of keys remained in police evidence, a rusted metal container holding decades of secrets that had finally been exposed to the light. And though justice came too late for many, the truth had finally emerged, released from its brick prison just as Marion had released herself from her own past, both of them forever changed by what had been uncovered. Sometimes on quiet nights, Marion still thinks she hears scratching, not from a chimney, but from the corners of her mind where the stories of Alina and the other women now reside, reminding her that the most haunting secrets are not supernatural, but the all-too-human capacity for evil and the courage it takes to expose it to the light. Crime 4, the dog wouldn't stop scratching under the stairs. When she finally looked, she found a tarp-wrapped bundle, bones, fabric, and a photo ID. The face was unfamiliar. The name was hers. Maplewood, Minnesota had always been known for its quiet neighborhoods and friendly residents. Located just outside of St. Paul, the small suburban community prided itself on its safety ratings and excellent schools. Andrea Calloway had moved there in 2017, a 34-year-old single woman who worked remotely as a data analyst. Her modest 2-story home on Oak Ridge Lane had been built in the 1960s, with the kind of charm that only comes with age, hardwood floors that creaked in specific spots, a slightly slanted porch, and windows that sometimes stuck in humid weather. Friends described Andrea as methodical, even-tempered, and private. She kept to herself but wasn't considered unfriendly by her neighbors. She would wave when collecting her mail or walking her rescue greyhound, Winston. The tall, slender woman with auburn hair cut in a practical bob had established a predictable routine. Morning runs with Winston, work at her home office, occasional grocery trips to Johnson's Market on Thursdays, and dinner with her sister Melissa every other Sunday. It was the routine that made her disappearance in January 2019 so noticeable. First, it was Melissa who raised the alarm when Andrea missed their regular dinner. Then her employer reported that she hadn't logged in for 3 consecutive days. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her car remained in the driveway. Winston had been found by a neighbor, wandering the yard and whining. Detective Sarah Hammond of the Maplewood Police Department initially approached the case as a possible suicide or voluntary disappearance. Andrea had been seeing a therapist for what friends described as mild anxiety and had recently ended a year-long relationship with a colleague from Minneapolis. The investigation uncovered that Andrea had withdrawn $4,000 from her savings account 2 weeks before her disappearance, but her passport remained in her desk drawer, untouched. When someone just vanishes from their own home, Detective Hammond later explained in her case notes, you look for disruptions in patterns. Andrea's home showed no signs of forced entry, no struggle. Her toothbrush was missing, along with a small suitcase. The logical conclusion was that she left voluntarily. The case might have remained classified as a voluntary disappearance if not for Winston, the greyhound. Andrea's sister Melissa had taken him in after the disappearance, bringing him to her own home across town. For months, the dog showed no unusual behavior until Melissa moved into a new house in the summer of 2020. The Victorian-style home Melissa purchased had a small crawl space under the main staircase, sealed off with a decorative wooden panel that matched the wainscoting. 3 weeks after moving in, Melissa noticed Winston's obsessive behavior, scratching at the panel, whining, refusing to leave the area even when offered treats or walks. "I thought maybe there were mice," Melissa told journalists later. "I kept telling him to stop, but every night without fail he'd be there scratching." Finally, on August 17, 2020, Melissa decided to investigate. She removed the panel, expecting to find evidence of rodents. Instead, the beam of her flashlight fell upon a bulky mass wrapped in blue construction tarp and secured with duct tape. The shape was unmistakably human. The police report detailed the discovery in clinical terms. Remains found in advanced stage of decomposition, wrapped in construction-grade tarp. Female, estimated age 30-40, approximately 59 in height. Time of death estimated between 12–18 months prior to discovery. What perplexed investigators immediately was the ID found with the body, a Minnesota driver's license belonging to Andrea Calloway. The photo, however, was not of the Andrea that Melissa knew. It showed a woman with similar coloring but different facial features. The height listed on the license, 59, matched the remains, but Andrea had been 55. Detective Hammond, who had kept a personal interest in the disappearance case, immediately reopened the investigation. "We had a body with Andrea's ID but not Andrea's face," she would later testify. And the house the body was found in had been purchased by Melissa just months earlier from a seller she had no prior connection to. The property records showed the house had changed hands 3 times since 2019. The forensic team worked meticulously, extracting DNA from the remains. The results returned no matches in any database. Dental records comparison ruled out the possibility that this was Andrea Calloway. The victim remained unidentified, carrying another woman's identity. The autopsy revealed the cause of death, asphyxiation. The victim had been strangled with significant force, leaving distinct fractures in the hyoid bone. Microscopic fibers found embedded in the neck tissue matched a specific type of rope used in sailing, a nylon polyester blend with a distinctive blue tracer thread. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered something troubling about Andrea's past. Before moving to Maplewood, she had spent 6 months in Seattle, Washington. Her employment records showed a gap during this time, though her bank statements indicated regular cash deposits. Her therapist's notes, obtained through court order, referenced Andrea's need for reinvention and leaving the past behind. When police examined the previous owners of Melissa's house, they found that the most recent seller, a house-flipping company called New Leaf Properties, had purchased it from a couple named James and Sarah Delaney. The Delaneys had owned the home for only 7 months before selling it at a loss and relocating to Arizona. Detective Hammond tracked down the Delaneys, who revealed they had sold the house because of persistent plumbing issues. When asked if they had ever accessed the crawl space, James Delaney said they had only looked inside once when inspecting the house and had found nothing unusual. The timeline started to form a disturbing pattern, Hammond noted. The body had been placed in that crawl space sometime after the Delaney's inspection, but before they sold the house. Investigators returned to the crawl space with more sophisticated equipment. Luminol testing revealed traces of blood that had seeped into the wooden floorboards, blood that matched the DNA of the unidentified victim. More surprisingly, partial fingerprints were lifted from the inside layer of the duct tape. These prints matched neither the victim nor Andrea, but when run through the national database, they returned a hit: Caroline Weber, a 32-year-old woman who had been reported missing from Seattle in 2018. The connection to Seattle led investigators back to Andrea's time there. They discovered that Andrea and Caroline had briefly worked together at a boutique marketing firm. Former colleagues described them as cordial but not particularly close. However, Andrea had abruptly quit her position just 2 weeks after Caroline's disappearance. What followed was an intricate web of identity theft. Caroline Weber's financial records showed that someone had been slowly draining her accounts after her disappearance, making small withdrawals that wouldn't trigger fraud alerts. The transactions originated from various locations along the route from Seattle to Minnesota. Detective Hammond theorized, "We believe Andrea Calloway assumed Caroline Weber's identity after her death, used her finances to establish herself in Minnesota, then created a new Andrea Calloway with altered appearance details." But this raised an even more disturbing question: where was the real Andrea Calloway? The investigation took another turn when police discovered a storage unit in St. Paul registered under the name A. Weber. Inside, they found boxes of women's clothing, several wigs, makeup kits for theatrical-level transformations, and a journal. The journal, written in what handwriting experts confirmed was Andrea's, contained detailed observations about Caroline, her mannerisms, speech patterns, daily routines. One entry reads, "She walks with her weight on her heels, remember this. She touches her neck when anxious. Her laugh starts low and ends high. These details matter." As the investigation continued, detectives learned that Andrea had studied theater in college before switching to business analytics. She had specialized in character development and method acting. Former classmates described her as intensely committed to her roles, sometimes staying in character for days. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A facial recognition scan matched a woman arrested for drunk driving in Portland, Oregon in February 2019, just weeks after Andrea's disappearance. The woman had given her name as Elaine Mercer and had been released after paying a fine. Comparing booking photos with pictures of Andrea Calloway, forensic analysts confirmed it was the same person, despite differences in hair color and styling. Current efforts to locate Elaine Mercer have been unsuccessful. The trail goes cold after a bus ticket purchased to Vancouver, Canada, in March 2019. As for the woman buried in the crawl space, now identified as Caroline Weber, many questions remain. How did Andrea convince her to come to Minnesota? Was Caroline's death premeditated or the result of a confrontation gone wrong? And most disturbingly, how did Andrea manage to hide the body in a house she would never own, in a place where her sister would eventually live? Melissa Calloway now lives with relatives in another state, too traumatized by the discovery to remain in the house. Winston stays with her, no longer scratching at walls or floors, but sometimes staring intently at empty corners as if seeing something or someone that isn't there. The investigation remains open. Andrea Calloway, or whoever she has become, is still at large. Detective Hammond keeps a photo of Caroline Weber on her desk, a reminder of the woman whose life was stolen twice, once when she was killed and again when her identity was erased. In cases like these, Hammond reflects, the truth often hides in plain sight. We just don't recognize it until it's too late. Somewhere in this world, a woman carries secrets beneath her skin. She might have new habits, a new voice, a new name. But some things can't be buried completely. Not bodies, not identities, not the persistent scratching of a dog who remembers the scent of death. Crime 5, it showed up in her mailbox, handwritten, with no return address and no postage. Inside, "I'm proud of the woman you've become." It was signed Dad. Her father had been buried 3 years before. She checked the signature. It was real. The small town of Millbrook, Connecticut, wasn't known for mysteries. Set against rolling hills and changing seasons, it was the kind of place where neighbors brought casseroles when someone was sick and waved from porches on summer evenings. For Elaine Kendall, it had always been a place of comfort until the day she received the birthday card. Elaine had grown up in Millbrook, the daughter of local high school principal Robert Kendall and his wife Marie. Robert was respected in town, stern but fair, the kind of educator students remembered decades later. He'd been a man of routines, coffee black at 6 a.m., newspapers folded just so, birthdays remembered with cards containing exactly 3 sentences and a $20 bill. Never more, never less. When Robert died of heart failure in October 2021, the whole town attended his funeral. Elaine, then 31, had moved back from Boston to care for her widowed father during his final months. After his passing, she decided to stay, taking a job at the local library and settling into her childhood home. Marie had died years earlier from cancer, and with both parents gone, the house felt both empty and full of memories. The card arrived on April 17, 2024, Elaine's 34th birthday. That morning had been unremarkable. Elaine woke at 7, made coffee, and watched the spring rain tap against the kitchen window. She'd taken the day off from the library, planning nothing more exciting than catching up on a mystery novel and ordering takeout from the Thai place that had opened the previous year. Around 10, she stepped onto the covered porch to check the mail, pulling her cardigan tight against the April chill. Bills, a small package from an online order, and a pale blue envelope, her name written in a familiar slant, no stamp, no postmark, no return address. Back in the kitchen, she opened the envelope last, assuming it was a birthday card from a neighbor who had dropped it directly into her box. Inside was a simple card with watercolor flowers on the front. The message was brief: "I'm proud of the woman you've become." It was signed simply, Dad. The coffee mug slipped from Elaine's fingers, shattering against the tile floor. She knew her father's handwriting, the slightly tilted D with the exaggerated loop, the way the D in proud curved back just a little too far. It wasn't similar to her father's handwriting, it was identical. Detective Marcus Webb received the call at 10:47 a.m. Elaine's voice was steady but tight, the way people sound when they're working very hard not to unravel. Webb had been with the Millbrook Police Department for 17 years. In a town of just under 7,000 people, he knew most residents by name, including the Kendalls. "I'll come by and take a look," he told her, hearing the unspoken play beneath her measured words. The card sat on Elaine's kitchen table in a plastic bag when Webb arrived. He examined it carefully, noting the lack of postage and the handwriting that, even to his untrained eye, appeared consistent with samples Elaine showed him from birthday cards her father had sent years before. "Is there anyone who might have access to your father's old cards? Someone who could have copied his writing?" Webb asked, his notebook open, pen hovering above the paper. Elaine shook her head. "His personal effects are all here. I have all his old cards in a box upstairs. No one else has been through them. Webb took the card as evidence, promising to check for fingerprints and analyze the handwriting professionally. As he was leaving, he paused, a question forming. Elaine, was there anything special about this birthday? Anything different from others since your father passed? She considered the question, her fingers absently tracing the wood grain of the table. It's the first one I've spent in the house alone. Last year my cousin stayed with me for a few weeks around my birthday, and the year before was just months after Dad died. Friends were still checking in regularly. Webb nodded, making a note. And who knew your father well enough to know about his birthday card habit? Everyone, I suppose. Dad was consistent about things like that. All my friends growing up knew he sent cards with exactly 3 sentences and $20. It was kind of a joke. That evening, Elaine couldn't sleep. The house creaked and settled around her, sounds she normally found comforting now seeming ominous. Around midnight, she called her friend Meredith, who arrived 30 minutes later with an overnight bag and a bottle of wine. Someone's messing with you, Meredith said, pouring generous glasses of Cabernet. It's sick, but there has to be a logical explanation. Elaine wasn't so sure. The card had appeared directly in her mailbox with no postal markings. Someone had hand-delivered it. The thought sent a chill through her that the wine couldn't touch. The following day, Detective Webb called with preliminary findings. No fingerprints on the card except Elaine's. The handwriting analysis would take longer, but the expert's initial impression was that it matched Robert Kendall's samples almost perfectly. Too perfectly, maybe, Webb said, his voice carefully neutral. Professional forgers sometimes overdo the distinctive features. A week passed. Elaine returned to work at the library, trying to push the incident from her mind. Then the second card arrived. This one appeared on the kitchen table, inside the house. No envelope this time, just a folded note card with a message. Check the attic floorboards where the roof beam crosses. I left something for you. The handwriting was the same. Webb arrived within 15 minutes of Elaine's panicked call. The house was locked, no signs of forced entry. Together, they climbed to the attic, Webb leading the way with a flashlight despite the afternoon sun streaming through the dusty windows. The attic was largely empty. Elaine had donated most of her parents' belongings after her father's death. In the spot where the main roof beam crossed the floor, Webb knelt down, examining the wide pine boards. This one's loose, he said, working his fingers around the edge of a floorboard that looked no different from the others to Elaine's eyes. The board came up easily, revealing a small space beneath. Inside was a small leather-bound book, her father's journal, and an envelope containing $50,000 in cash. The journal's final entry was dated October 14, 2021, 3 days before Robert Kendall's death. It read, "Told Marshall everything today. No way out. If anything happens, you should look beneath the attic floor. God forgive me." When Webb ran the name Marshall through their database, a match appeared. Marshall Deaver, former vice principal at Millbrook High during Robert's tenure. Deaver had left town suddenly in 2019, citing family reasons. Further investigation revealed that funds had gone missing from the school's scholarship foundation over a period of years, funds that Robert Kendall had helped oversee. The amount, exactly $50,000. "Your father may have been involved in embezzlement," Webb told Elaine gently 3 days later, "and this Marshall Deaver might have been his partner or perhaps was blackmailing him." But that didn't explain the cards. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marie Kendall's younger sister, Elaine's Aunt Patricia, had been in hospice care for late-stage cancer in a facility 2 towns over. After hearing about the mysterious cards, she asked to speak with Elaine and Detective Webb. Robert had secrets, Patricia whispered, her voice weak but her eyes clear. Marie knew, but she protected him. There was money missing from the school, and Marshall Deaver knew. "Did my father steal the money?" Elaine asked, her world tilting beneath her. Patricia shook her head slightly. No, he discovered the theft, traced it to Marshall. But Marshall had evidence of something Robert had done years before, something that would have destroyed him. So Robert covered for him, helped hide the missing funds. What evidence? What had my father done? Patricia's eyes drifted to the window, to the trees beyond. There was an accident in 1992. A student, a girl, was injured at a school event. Robert had been warned about a safety issue but ignored it. The girl never fully recovered. Marshall somehow found documentation that Robert had been informed of the danger beforehand. 2 days after their visit, Patricia passed away. And on that same day, a third card appeared in Elaine's mailbox. This one said simply, "Marshall is back in town, be careful." Webb put a patrol car on Elaine's street and began searching for Marshall Deaver. Records showed he had indeed returned to Connecticut 2 months earlier, renting an apartment in Hartford, 40 minutes from Millbrook. When they brought Deaver in for questioning, he appeared genuinely shocked about the cards. His alibi for April 17th checked out. He had been at a job interview in Hartford, confirmed by multiple witnesses. He admitted to the embezzlement and to blackmailing Robert Kendall, but insisted he had no idea about any messages being sent to Elaine. "Why would I draw attention to myself now?" he asked reasonably. "I got away clean." The case stalled. The cards had seemingly appeared from nowhere, written in a dead man's hand, revealing secrets long buried. Webb had forensic experts examine everything, paper, ink, handwriting, but the results were inconclusive. The cards couldn't definitively be tied to any living person. 3 weeks after the third card, Elaine was sorting through old photographs in the living room when she found a picture she'd never seen before. It showed her father with a young woman, both smiling at the camera. On the back, in her father's handwriting, Amy, graduation day, 1993. The name struck a chord. Amy, the injured student Patricia had mentioned. Elaine took the photo to Webb, who ran a search for Amy in connection with Millbrook High around that time period. The match was immediate. Amy Winters, a former student who had suffered a serious fall during a school theater production in 1992, resulting in permanent nerve damage to her right arm. She had graduated despite missing months of school. And Amy Winters now lived just 3 blocks from Elaine's house, in a small blue cottage where she'd moved 6 months earlier. A house with a clear view of Elaine's mailbox from its upstairs window. When they interviewed Amy, she didn't deny sending the cards. "He ruined my life," she said quietly, looking at her partially immobile right hand. "Then covered it up, graduated me when I couldn't even complete the work, paid for my silence with a college fund. I became a graphologist, an expert in handwriting, did you know that? Life's little ironies." "But why now?" Elaine asked, her voice breaking. "Why not when he was alive?" Amy's eyes were calm, almost sympathetic. "Because he died thinking he got away with it all. I wanted someone to know the truth. You deserved the truth, Elaine. And the money he hid, that was stolen from students like me. It should go back to the scholarship fund." In the end, there were no charges filed against Amy Winters. The statute of limitations on the embezzlement had expired, and sending anonymous cards, even disturbing ones, wasn't technically a crime. Elaine donated the money to the school's scholarship fund, establishing a grant specifically for students pursuing physical therapy, Amy's uncompleted dream. The journal went into a safe deposit box, its secrets kept private except for what had already been revealed. Sometimes at night, Elaine still thinks she hears the sound of paper slipping through the mail slot. But her mailbox remains empty of unexplained cards, and gradually the house has become just a house again, full of memories both good and bad, but no longer harboring secrets. In Millbrook, people still speak of Robert Kendall with respect, though some now add a question mark to his legacy. The past, as it often does, has revealed itself to be more complex than the simple narrative everyone had accepted. And Elaine, she keeps her father's birthday cards, all of them, including the 3 that came after his death, in a box on her closet shelf. Sometimes, late at night, she takes them out and studies the handwriting, wondering how much of what we know about those we love is ever the complete truth. Crime 6, while scrubbing away old rust, she noticed something under the soap scum, a series of numbers carved into the porcelain. She searched them online. They led to an old missing persons case. And the last update listed her address. Marissa Dalton had always been particular about cleanliness. Friends teased her about it, calling her Ms. Meticulous behind her back, but she never minded. At 32, she had finally saved enough for a down payment on her first home, a modest 2-bedroom bungalow in Oak Ridge, Vermont, built sometime in the 1960s. The previous owners, an elderly couple moving to Florida, had lived there for nearly 4 decades. The house needed work, but Marissa saw potential beneath the dated wallpaper and worn carpets. The bathroom became her first renovation project. She removed the shower curtain with its faded floral pattern and began scrubbing the old cast-iron tub on a cool September evening. The porcelain was stained with decades of mineral deposits and rust rings. As she worked her way around the drain with a pumice stone, her hand passed over something unusual, a series of uneven grooves beneath the accumulated grime. Curiosity piqued, Marissa scrubbed harder at that spot, revealing what appeared to be numbers carved crudely into the porcelain, 51,498-37. Not deep enough to breach the surface entirely, but intentional, deliberate. Someone had taken the time to etch these digits permanently into the bathtub. Maybe a manufacturer's code, she murmured to herself, though she knew bathtubs weren't typically marked this way. The numbers looked hand-carved, almost desperate in their execution. She took a photo with her phone and continued cleaning, but found herself returning to those digits throughout the evening. Later, sipping tea at her kitchen table, Marissa typed the numbers into a search engine. The first several results were irrelevant technical specifications, industrial codes, random strings of numbers. But halfway down the page, something caught her eye, a link to the Vermont Missing Persons database. The page loaded slowly, revealing a case file for Catherine Simmons, age 19. Last seen, May 14, 1998. Case number 237. 5/14/98, 237. Marissa's cup clattered against the saucer. The missing girl's date and case number matched exactly what was carved into her bathtub. The photograph showed a young woman with auburn hair and a hesitant smile. According to the file, Catherine had been a nursing student at the local community college. She'd left her apartment to meet friends on a Thursday evening and never arrived. Her roommate reported her missing the following day. The investigation had gone cold after several months. Marissa scrolled to the bottom of the page. Under last known residence, she found an address that made her skin prickle. 147 Elmwood Drive, Oak Ridge, Vermont, her house. Sleep evaded Marissa that night. She lay awake, listening to the old house settle around her, imagining Catherine Simmons walking these same halls, using that same bathtub. Had something happened to her here? Was the carving a desperate message, a final communication? And why hadn't the previous owners or investigators discovered it? The next morning, Marissa called the Oak Ridge Police Department. After being transferred twice, she reached Detective Paul Morrow, a veteran officer with a gravelly voice who seemed surprised by her call. "That case is older than most of the officers working here now," he said. "I remember it, though, one of those that never quite lets you go." Marissa explained about the numbers in the bathtub. Morrow's tone shifted from polite disinterest to focused attention. "The Hendersons owned that place back then," he said, referring to the elderly couple who had sold Marissa the house. "But they rented out the basement as a separate apartment sometimes. College kids mostly. I don't recall Catherine living there officially, but she might have stayed with a boyfriend or a friend who did." Detective Morrow arranged to visit that afternoon. He arrived precisely at 3, a stocky man with thinning gray hair and tired eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of Marissa's home. In the bathroom, he knelt awkwardly beside the tub, running his fingers over the etched numbers. "We never found her," he said quietly. "No body, no evidence of what happened, just gone." He took photographs and made notes. "The Hendersons renovated this bathroom in 2001, he said. "New tiles, new sink, but they kept the original tub. Either they never noticed these numbers, or they did and didn't report it," Marissa finished. Detective Morrow nodded grimly. "We'll need to speak with them again." Over the next week, Marissa's house became the center of renewed investigation. The police interviewed the Hendersons by phone in Florida. They claimed ignorance about any numbers in the bathtub or any connection to Catherine Simmons. They did confirm renting the basement to various tenants over the years, but couldn't recall specific names from 1998. Marissa's research revealed that in May 1998, the basement had been rented to a man named Daniel Cross, then a 25-year-old graduate student. Police records showed he had been questioned after Catherine's disappearance. They had dated briefly, but without evidence, the investigation had moved on to other leads. What haunted Marissa most was imagining Catherine's final moments, if indeed she had met her end in this house. Had she carved those numbers herself, a last desperate act to document what was happening, or had someone else etched them as some kind of macabre trophy? Detective Morrow located Daniel Cross living in Chicago, now a professor of economics with a wife and 2 children. When contacted by Chicago police, Cross seemed genuinely shocked about the discovery. He agreed to fly to Vermont for questioning. "I dated Catherine for maybe 3 months," he told Morrow during his interview, which Marissa was permitted to observe. "It wasn't serious. We broke up about a month before she disappeared. I was devastated when she went missing. We all were. The entire campus was searching for her." Cross's alibi for the night of Catherine's disappearance had been verified back in 1998. He'd been at a department function with dozens of witnesses. Still, Detective Morrow pressed him about the basement apartment. Who else had access? Who visited regularly? Cross ran a hand through his now graying hair. Friends from the program, Catherine a few times, even after we broke up. She stayed friends with my roommate, Evan. Evan, Morrow consulted his notes. We don't have an Evan mentioned in the original case files. Evan Winters, he wasn't officially on the lease, just crashed on our couch for a few months that spring. Bit of a drifter. Good guy though, artist type. The investigation expanded to locate this previously unknown connection. Meanwhile, Marissa struggled with the knowledge that her house might have been the scene of a young woman's final moments. She found herself avoiding the bathroom, showering quickly when necessary, unable to relax in the space. 3 days later, Detective Morrow called. We found Winters, he said, living off the grid in northern Maine. Local police questioned him yesterday. According to Morrow, Winters had been visibly shaken by the mention of Catherine Simmons. He admitted to having had a brief, intense relationship with her after she broke up with Cross. He claimed Catherine had ended things and he left town shortly after her disappearance, overwhelmed by grief and suspicion from others. What troubled the detective was that Winters' departure date, supposedly driven by grief, was actually 2 days before Catherine was reported missing. The investigation intensified. Forensic specialists examined the bathtub, removing samples from around and beneath the etched numbers. Modern techniques revealed traces of blood that had seeped into the porous areas where the porcelain was breached. Catherine's parents, now in their 70s, provided DNA samples. After 25 years of uncertainty, they might finally learn what happened to their daughter. A week later, the results confirmed everyone's worst fears. The blood belonged to Catherine Simmons. Armed with this evidence and inconsistencies in his statements, police arrested Evan Winters. During interrogation, he maintained his innocence but could not explain the blood or his hasty departure. Searches of his remote Maine property uncovered nothing conclusive. For Marissa, the house had become both a crime scene and a memorial. She couldn't bring herself to use the bathtub again, eventually deciding to complete her renovation by removing it entirely. As workers carefully extracted the tub, they made another discovery. A small silver locket had fallen into the space between the tub and the wall. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, Catherine. Detective Morrow added the locket to the evidence against Winters, but the case remained circumstantial. Without a body or confession, prosecutors were hesitant to file charges beyond obstruction of justice and lying to investigators. Catherine's parents visited Marissa's house once, standing silently in the bathroom where their daughter had left her final message. Catherine's mother touched the wall where the tub had been. She was always clever, she whispered, even at the end. The investigation continues, with Winters awaiting trial on lesser charges. Marissa still lives in the house on Elmwood Drive, haunted not by supernatural presence, but by the knowledge of what likely happened there, and by the resilience of a young woman who, in her final moments, left behind numbers that would eventually speak for her. Sometimes, late at night, Marissa thinks she can hear water running in the bathroom, though the old tub is long gone. Not a ghost, she tells herself, but memory, the house itself remembering what happened within its walls, waiting for justice that may never fully come. Crime 7, they were clearing land to build a fence when the shovel hit something soft. Beneath the dirt, a porcelain doll wrapped in cloth lying atop a ribcage. The doll's face had been scratched away. On its chest, "I remember what you did." The small town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, had always been the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked. A community of just under 4,000 residents, where the local diner still served the same apple pie recipe from 1952, and where most families had lived for generations. It was here that Rebecca Keller had spent her entire life. Rebecca was known for her garden rows of vibrant zinnias and dahlias that lined her front yard each summer. At 67, she lived alone in the white colonial house her late husband had built in the 1980s. Her neighbors described her as kind but private, the type who would bring soup when someone was sick but rarely spoke about herself. Every morning at precisely 7:30, Rebecca would walk her aging golden retriever, Samson, along the creek that bordered her property. This routine had been uninterrupted for 15 years, which was why her neighbor, Tom Wallace, noticed immediately when the walk stopped in early March of 2016. Tom hadn't seen Rebecca or Samson for 3 days. Her newspapers were piling up on the porch, and the lights in her house remained off. When his calls went unanswered, he contacted Rebecca's daughter, Marie, who lived an hour away in Pittsburgh. "Mom always answers by the third ring," Marie explained to the responding officer, Deputy James Harmon, "and she never goes anywhere without telling me first." The initial welfare check revealed nothing obviously wrong. Rebecca's house was immaculate. The kitchen counter held a half-drunk cup of tea, long gone cold. Her purse sat on the hallway table, wallet and keys inside. Her car remained in the garage. Only Rebecca and Samson were missing. The search began immediately. Volunteers combed the woods beyond the creek. Police interviewed neighbors and checked local hospitals. Missing person flyers with Rebecca's gentle smile appeared in shop windows throughout Millbrook. She wouldn't have wandered off, Marie insisted. Mom was sharp as a tack. Something happened to her. Deputy Harmon, who had known Rebecca since his childhood, agreed that the disappearance was out of character. Yet there were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. Rebecca had simply vanished, as if she had stepped out of her ordered life and into thin air. It wasn't until the 6th day of the search that they found Samson. The elderly dog was discovered huddled inside an abandoned hunting cabin 3 miles from Rebecca's home. He was dehydrated but alive, with no visible injuries. His leash was still attached to his collar, the end frayed as if it had been cut or torn. "Dogs don't just run away from their owners," Deputy Harmon said, "especially not loyal ones like Samson. Someone took him there." The discovery shifted the investigation. What had begun as a search for a potentially confused elderly woman now carried the weight of something more sinister. Officers returned to Rebecca's house, this time looking more carefully for evidence of foul play. In Rebecca's bedroom, they found a small notebook tucked between her mattress and box spring. Most pages contained mundane notes, grocery lists, appointment reminders, but the final entry, dated the day before she disappeared, read, "He's back. I saw him watching the house again." There was no indication of who he might be, and Marie claimed her mother had never mentioned feeling threatened or watched. But the note cast a shadow over Millbrook, a community unaccustomed to locking their doors. 3 weeks after Rebecca's disappearance, Tom Wallace decided to repair the wooden fence separating his property from hers. The fence had been damaged during the search efforts, and he felt it was the least he could do while the investigation continued. The early spring ground was still soft from recent rains when Tom's shovel struck something that wasn't earth or stone. Brushing away the soil, he uncovered what appeared to be a small bundle wrapped in cloth. As more dirt was cleared away, the bundle revealed itself to be a porcelain doll lying atop human remains. The doll's once delicate face had been deliberately scratched away, leaving only white gouges where features should have been. Pinned to its chest was a handwritten note, "I remember what you did." The remains beneath were determined to be those of an adult female, but they weren't Rebecca's. According to the forensic anthropologist called to the scene, the bones had been in the ground for at least 20 years. Whoever this was, Dr. Alina Sims explained, they were buried here long before Rebecca Keller owned this property. The revelation stunned the community. Had Rebecca known about the body buried just yards from her home? Was this connected to her disappearance? And who was the unnamed woman whose bones had lain silently beneath the garden for 2 decades? The skull showed evidence of blunt force trauma, a single devastating blow to the back of the head. The victim had been between 30 and 40 years old at the time of death. There were no dental records matching in the system, no reports of missing women from Millbrook during that time period who fit the description. As investigators dug deeper into the property's history, they discovered that before Rebecca and her husband purchased the land in 1985, it had belonged to the Lohman family. Harris Lohman had been a respected doctor in Millbrook until his sudden departure in 1982. According to town records, Dr. Lohman had sold the property and moved west after his wife, Elaine, left him. "Nobody ever questioned it," said Margaret Benson, who had been the town librarian since the 1970s. "Elaine was always restless, talking about seeing the world. When Harris said she'd finally done it, we just accepted it." But there was no record of Elaine Lohman after 1982. No credit card activity, no driver's license renewals. She had disappeared as completely as Rebecca had 34 years later. When officers located Harris Lohman living in Arizona, he maintained that his wife had abandoned him, leaving only a note saying she needed to find herself. He claimed to know nothing about the remains found on his former property, expressing shock at the suggestion that they might belong to Elaine. "My wife was alive when she left me," he insisted during a phone interview. "Whatever happened to her, it happened after she was gone." Without more evidence, investigators couldn't confirm the identity of the remains or connect them directly to Harris Lohman. The case reached a standstill, with 2 missing women separated by decades but linked by the same piece of land. It was Samson who ultimately led them to Rebecca. The aging dog had begun escaping Tom's yard, where he was being kept temporarily. Each time, he would be found in the same location, scratching at the earth near an old well on the edge of Rebecca's property, a well that had been sealed years before. When officers opened the concrete cap, they found Rebecca's body at the bottom. Unlike the older remains, Rebecca's cause of death was clear: strangulation. Around her neck was a gold chain, and attached to it a small key. The key fit a locked cedar box discovered in Rebecca's attic. Inside, newspaper clippings about Elaine Lohman's disappearance, a woman's wedding ring, and a faded photograph showing a much younger Rebecca standing beside Elaine. On the back of the photo, written in fading ink, "The truth stays buried with her." Marie was bewildered. Mom never mentioned knowing Elaine Lohman. Why would she have these things? The investigation revealed that before her marriage, Rebecca had worked as a nurse in Dr. Lohman's practice. She had left the position abruptly in early 1982, just months before Elaine's disappearance. When confronted with this information and the contents of the cedar box, Harris Lohman's careful composure finally cracked. "It was an accident," he whispered. "Elaine found out about the affair, Rebecca and me. She threatened to ruin everything. There was a struggle and she fell. Rebecca helped me bury her. We thought it was over." But it wasn't over. Rebecca had carried the knowledge for decades, living just feet above the woman whose death she had helped conceal. Had guilt finally overwhelmed her? Had she threatened to confess? The doll with its scratched-out face and accusing note suggested someone else had known or discovered the truth. Harris Lohman was arrested for Elaine's murder, but the identity of Rebecca's killer remains uncertain. DNA evidence found on the ligature used to strangle her did not match Lohman, who was verifiably in Arizona at the time of her death. Some in Millbrook believe that justice works in mysterious ways, that Rebecca's past had finally caught up with her. Others wonder if someone else connected to Elaine had discovered the truth and sought revenge. The doll, with its eerie message, offered a clue that led nowhere. Tom Wallace still lives next door to Rebecca's empty house. The garden she tended so carefully has grown wild, but he can't bring himself to cut the flowers. "Sometimes I think I see her out there in the early morning," he says quietly, "walking Samson along the creek like she always did, like nothing ever happened." But something did happen in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Two women vanished, 34 years apart, their fates intertwined by secrets buried beneath flowers and fence posts. And somewhere, someone remembers what they did. The porcelain doll, now preserved as evidence, sits in an evidence locker at the Millbrook Police Department. Its blank, scratched face stares upward, as if still watching, still remembering, still waiting for the full truth to emerge from the disturbed earth. Crime 8, the morning fog still clung to the streets of Fallbrook, California, when Margaret Keene started her day on October 12, 2016. At 53, she had established a comfortable routine in the small town she'd called home for nearly 2 decades. Her modest ranch-style house on Oakdale Lane sat nestled among mature oak trees, providing a sense of privacy that Margaret had always cherished. Friends described Margaret as methodical, kind, and deeply private. A retired high school English teacher, she volunteered twice weekly at the local library and maintained a small but vibrant garden that neighbors often admired from the sidewalk. What few people knew was that Margaret had slowly withdrawn from many social connections over the past year. She was always pleasant, but something had changed, recalled Susan Winters, who lived 3 houses down. She used to invite me over for tea every Sunday, but those invitations just stopped coming around last winter. Margaret had divorced her husband of 26 years, Alan Keene, 14 months earlier. The split had been amicable on the surface. They divided assets without a protracted legal battle, and Alan moved to San Diego shortly after. Police reports would later reveal that Margaret had called the non-emergency line twice in the months before their separation, reporting what she described as unusual disturbances around her property. On that October morning, Margaret followed her usual Wednesday pattern. Security footage from the corner market showed her purchasing a newspaper and coffee at 7:32 a.m. She exchanged pleasant words with the cashier, paid in cash, and exited. The market's exterior camera captured her walking toward her white 2010 Honda Civic. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Margaret Keene. By Thursday afternoon, the absence of Margaret's presence was notable only to a select few. When she failed to appear for her regular library shift, Diane Palmer, the head librarian, called Margaret's cell phone. The call went straight to voicemail. Not overly concerned, Diane left a message asking if everything was all right. "I just figured she might have caught that flu that was going around," Diane later told investigators. "It wasn't like her to miss without calling, but people get sick." By Friday morning, concern had grown. Margaret hadn't responded to texts or calls from the library staff. Her newspaper remained rolled in its plastic sleeve at the end of her driveway. It was Susan Winters who finally knocked on Margaret's door at 6:15 p.m. that Friday. When no one answered, she peered through windows and noticed Margaret's coffee cup sitting on the kitchen counter, half full, with what appeared to be mold forming on its surface. The responding officers found no signs of forced entry. Margaret's Honda Civic was parked in the garage. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter, containing her wallet, identification, credit cards, and $167 in cash. Her cell phone was discovered on her bedside table, plugged into its charger. The bed was made, with no indication it had been slept in recently. The house itself presented a peculiar scene, not one of violence or struggle, but of interrupted routine. A shower in the master bathroom was damp, with a wet towel hung neatly on the rack. A load of laundry sat in the dryer, seemingly forgotten. In the kitchen, a single plate and fork rested in the dish rack, evidently hand-washed and left to dry. Detective Aaron Mitchell, who would lead the investigation for the next 3 years, documented his initial impressions in his case notebook. House presents as if occupant stepped out momentarily and expected to return. No indications of planning for absence, mail accumulating, perishable food in refrigerator, daily medications in bathroom cabinet indicating regular use up until disappearance. As days passed, the investigation revealed subtle details that painted an increasingly unsettling picture. Margaret's computer showed searches for how to know if someone is watching you and legal ways to protect your home from surveillance. These searches dated back nearly 8 months. More troubling was the discovery of a journal hidden inside a hollowed-out book on Margaret's bookshelf. The entries spanning the past year described a growing sense of being observed. "I feel eyes on me again today," read an entry from 3 months before her disappearance. "A says I'm being paranoid, but the car was there again. Dark blue sedan, different driver this time. Why won't anyone believe me?" Investigators tracked down Alan Keene in San Diego, where he expressed genuine shock at Margaret's disappearance. "She had become increasingly difficult in the last years of our marriage," he told Detective Mitchell. "She was convinced someone was following her, watching the house. I thought it was anxiety, maybe early signs of a mental health issue. I suggested therapy, but she took it as me not believing her, which only made things worse." Alan's alibi for the days surrounding Margaret's disappearance proved solid. He was teaching classes at a community college in San Diego, with dozens of witnesses and security footage confirming his presence far from Fallbrook. 3 weeks into the investigation, police obtained records from a private investigator named James Cordell, who had been hired by Margaret 6 months before her disappearance. Cordell confirmed that Margaret had retained his services to determine if she was under surveillance. "She was convinced someone was watching her home," Cordell stated in his interview. "I conducted counter-surveillance operations for 2 weeks and found nothing suspicious. I told her as much, but she insisted the watcher was just being careful because they knew I was there." Cordell's notes included detailed observations about Margaret's behavior, which he described as hypervigilant but not delusional. He believed she was genuinely frightened, though he couldn't verify the source of her fear. In December 2016, 2 months after Margaret vanished, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A hiking couple discovered a woman's raincoat in a remote area of the Cleveland National Forest, approximately 14 miles from Margaret's home. The distinctive turquoise coat was identified by Susan Winters as belonging to Margaret. Despite an extensive search of the surrounding area, no additional evidence was recovered. The investigation took another turn when Detective Mitchell interviewed Evelyn Keene, Alan's sister, who revealed that Margaret had confided in her about receiving mysterious letters in the months before her disappearance. "She showed me one of them," Evelyn recalled. "It was just a blank piece of paper with a single black dot in the center. Margaret was terrified by it, said it was the third such letter she'd received. When I asked why she hadn't told the police, she said they would think she was crazy." No such letters were found in Margaret's home, raising questions about whether she had disposed of them or whether they had been removed. In March 2017, police discovered that Margaret had withdrawn $24,000 from her savings account over the 6 months preceding her disappearance. The money had been taken out in amounts just under $10,000, presumably to avoid triggering bank reporting requirements. Where the money went remained a mystery. Margaret's lifestyle showed no signs of increased spending, and searches of her property revealed no hidden cash. The case grew colder as months passed into years. Then, in August 2019, nearly 3 years after Margaret vanished, a property developer clearing land for a new subdivision 8 miles outside Fallbrook uncovered a shallow grave containing human remains. Dental records confirmed it was Margaret Keene. Forensic analysis determined she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. The medical examiner placed her time of death within days of her disappearance. Even more disturbing was the discovery of a small leather pouch buried with her body, containing 23 small black stones and a handwritten note that read, "Now you see." The significance of this message remains unknown. To date, Margaret Keene's murder remains unsolved. The dark blue sedan she mentioned in her journal was never identified. The $24,000 she withdrew was never recovered, and the person or persons who caused Margaret to feel watched in her final months have never been found. Detective Mitchell, now retired, still keeps a copy of Margaret's case file at home. "Some cases get under your skin," he told a local reporter last year. "You know there's a truth out there waiting to be discovered. Sometimes I wake up at night thinking about those black stones, that note. What did Margaret see? And more importantly, who saw her?" In Fallbrook, residents still speak of Margaret in hushed tones. Her house on Oakdale Lane sold a year after her disappearance, and the new owners have since painted it a different color and removed the oak trees that once provided so much privacy. Some say they've done so to erase the lingering shadow of what happened there. Others suggest it's because they, too, sometimes feel watched from those same shadows. The investigation remains technically open, with occasional tips still coming in. But as time passes, the whispers in Fallbrook grow fainter, and the truth about what happened to Margaret Keene seems increasingly likely to remain buried, much like she was for those 3 silent years, known only to the person who watched, waited, and finally acted on that foggy October morning. Crime 9, she unscrewed the grate to clean the dust, but something shifted inside. A plastic folder wrapped in tape fell out. Inside, case files, maps, and one grainy photo of a girl sitting in her living room. The timestamp section had been scratched out. April in Millbrook, Oregon always brought a peculiar kind of chill. Not the winter kind that bites at your skin, but the damp sort that seeps into your bones and stays there. Rachel Pearson had grown accustomed to this feeling during her 15 years in the small logging town. At 42, she had finally purchased her first home, a modest 2-bedroom craftsman on Pinewood Drive that needed what real estate agents diplomatically called a little TLC. The previous owner, an elderly man named Walter Grayson, had lived there for over 3 decades before passing away in a nursing home. The house had sat empty for 11 months before Rachel closed on it, negotiating a price that reflected its dated condition and the mysterious odor that lingered in the hallway. Spring cleaning, Rachel told herself that Saturday morning as she dragged a stepladder into the narrow hallway. After 2 weeks of waking up congested, she had finally traced the musty smell to the ceiling vent. Standing on the third step, she could see the dust caked around the edges of the vent cover. She twisted the first screw with her fingers. It came loose easily, corroded by time and moisture. The second screw took more effort, and as she worked it free, she heard something shift inside the vent, a soft scraping sound like paper sliding against metal. When she removed the grate, a rectangular package wrapped in clear packing tape tumbled out, landing on the step below her. It was a folder, the kind used for office documents, sealed thoroughly in transparent tape that had yellowed slightly with age. Rachel brought it to her kitchen table, heart beating a little faster than normal. Using a pair of scissors, she carefully cut along one edge of the tape. Inside were several papers, handwritten notes, photocopied police reports, and small maps of the area with certain locations circled in red marker. But what caused her pulse to quicken was the photograph. It showed a girl, perhaps 16 or 17, with long dark hair, sitting on a couch that looked eerily similar to the one Rachel had inherited with the house. The girl appeared unaware she was being photographed. She was simply reading a book, her feet tucked under her. The timestamp at the bottom had been scratched out with something sharp, obscuring the date. Scrawled on the back in blue ink were the words, Margaret, Day 3. Rachel spread the papers across the table. Most were notes about someone named Margaret Sullivan, a girl reported missing from the neighboring town of Oak Ridge in 1998. The writer had documented her routines, her friends, the times she left her house. There were detailed observations about her habits, when she closed her curtains, when she typically returned home from school, what car she drove. One of the most disturbing items was a small hand-drawn map showing the route from Millbrook to Oak Ridge, with specific woodland areas marked with red X's. Next to one of these marks was a note, deep enough, check for cameras. Rachel's hand was trembling as she picked up her phone. The sensation of being in the same house where these documents had been hidden made her skin crawl. She dialed the Millbrook Police Department. Detective Aaron Holloway wasn't what Rachel expected. In his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose, he reminded her more of a high school history teacher than a detective. He handled each document with latex-gloved hands, examining them methodically. Walter Grayson, he said, more to himself than to Rachel. Name doesn't ring any immediate bells, but he lived here during the right time frame. Time frame for what? Rachel asked, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself despite the heating being on. Detective Holloway looked up, seeming to weigh how much to share. Margaret Sullivan disappeared on October 14, 1998. She was 17, left Oak Ridge High School after debate club practice, got into her car, and was never seen again. Her vehicle was found 2 days later at the Pine Ridge Trailhead, about 15 miles from here. Rachel glanced at the photograph again. The girl, Margaret, looked so ordinary, so unaware of what might happen to her. Was she ever found? No, Holloway replied, his voice gentle but matter-of-fact. It's been a cold case for over 20 years now. We get tips occasionally, but nothing substantial. The detective continued examining the papers, occasionally taking photos with his department-issued camera. Rachel watched as his expression grew increasingly troubled. "These aren't investigative notes," he finally said. "These are surveillance records. Whoever wrote these was watching her, tracking her movements." Rachel felt her stomach tighten. "Do you think Walter Grayson was involved in her disappearance?" "We can't jump to conclusions," he cautioned, "but we need to look deeper into Mr. Grayson's background. Did his family mention anything unusual when you bought the house?" "I never met them. Everything went through the estate attorney." Rachel paused. "But the neighbor, Mrs. Cavendish, she's lived next door for decades. She might know something about Walter." Mrs. Cavendish was a small woman with a surprisingly strong handshake and alert eyes that belied her 83 years. She invited Rachel and Detective Holloway into her immaculate living room, serving them tea in delicate cups that clinked softly against their saucers. "Walter, oh, he was a quiet sort, kept to himself mostly," she said, stirring sugar into her tea. "He worked as a land surveyor for the county until he retired in 2002 or 2003, I believe. Always polite when we ran into each other, but not one for neighborhood gatherings." "Did he have many visitors, family, friends?" Holloway asked. Mrs. Cavendish thought for a moment. "Not that I recall. His wife passed away in the early 90s, cancer, I believe. They never had children. After she died, he became even more reclusive." "Did you ever notice anything unusual about his behavior, particularly around 1998? The detective's tone remained conversational, but Rachel noticed his pen poised over his notepad. 1998, Mrs. Cavendish's brow furrowed. "Well, there was a period when he was gone quite a bit. I remember because my husband had just had his hip replacement, and I wanted to ask Walter if he could help bring in our garbage cans from the curb, but his truck was rarely there." "Do you remember what time of year this was?" "Fall, I believe. The leaves were turning. Walter was an avid hiker. That's what he told me when I asked where he'd been. Said he was taking advantage of the good weather before winter set in." As they left Mrs. Cavendish's house, Rachel noticed the detective's troubled expression. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking we need to check Walter Grayson's employment records and compare them with the timeline of Margaret's disappearance." He paused at his car door. As a land surveyor, he would have known every remote area in this county, every logging road, every hiking trail. Over the next week, Rachel found herself drawn deeper into the mystery of Margaret Sullivan. She took time off from her job as a pharmacy technician, unable to focus on work with the weight of what had been hidden in her house. She researched online archives of local newspapers, reading every article about the girl's disappearance. The case had received significant coverage initially. A pretty, well-liked teenager vanishing without explanation always did, but the stories dwindled as the months passed without breaks in the case. Detective Holloway called her on Thursday evening. "We found something," he said, his voice tight. "Walter Grayson called in sick to work for a week starting October 15, 1998, the day after Margaret disappeared." Rachel felt a chill run through her. That can't be a coincidence. "No, it can't." There was a pause. "The department has authorized us to bring in a forensic team to examine your house. I need your permission." "Of course," Rachel replied without hesitation. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." And Rachel, he hesitated. "You might want to stay somewhere else for a few days." The forensic team arrived at 8 a.m., 5 people in windbreakers with police emblazoned across the back. They brought equipment Rachel had only seen on television shows, alternative light sources, chemicals, specialized cameras. They started in the hallway where the vent was located, but soon expanded their search to the entire house. Rachel watched from her front yard, shivering despite the warm coffee in her hands. Neighbors peeked from windows or slowed their cars as they drove by, curiosity piqued by the unusual activity. It was nearly sunset when Detective Holloway emerged from the house, looking grim. He walked directly to Rachel, who had been sitting in her car to stay warm. "We found more documents hidden in the basement," he said quietly, "behind a loose brick in the foundation wall," and he hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "We found traces of blood beneath the floorboards in the spare bedroom. Very old, but the preliminary tests suggest human blood." Rachel felt her world tilting sideways. The house she had been so proud to purchase, where she had planned to build a new life, had potentially been the site of a young woman's final moments. "There's something else," Holloway continued. "We found a journal. Walter documented everything, his obsession with Margaret, how he watched her for months, how he planned it all. He describes taking her to a location in the woods, but he doesn't specify exactly where. We're going to need to search those areas marked on his maps." The search began the next day. Teams of officers and volunteers combed through the dense Oregon woods, focusing on the areas marked on Walter's crude maps. The weather didn't cooperate. Rain fell steadily, turning the forest floor into mud and making the search more difficult. 3 days later, in a remote clearing nearly 20 miles from Millbrook, a cadaver dog alerted its handler. The area had been disturbed long ago and had since grown over with native vegetation, but careful excavation revealed what everyone had feared: human remains. Dental records confirmed what the documents had already suggested. After 25 years, Margaret Sullivan had finally been found. Walter Grayson, who had died 4 years earlier of natural causes, had taken his darkest secret to his grave. But the evidence he'd hidden, perhaps out of some twisted desire to preserve his actions, or maybe due to an unconscious need for his crimes to eventually come to light, had finally brought a measure of closure to a decades-old mystery. For Rachel, the knowledge that her home had been bought with the proceeds of Walter's estate, money he'd earned while living a double life as a killer, was too much to bear. She put the house on the market, disclosing its dark history as required by law. The house on Pinewood Drive sold for far less than she had paid, purchased by a true crime enthusiast who was unsettlingly excited about its macabre past. Rachel moved to another state entirely, trying to outrun the memories of what she'd discovered. But sometimes, on damp April nights when the chill seems to seep into her bones, she thinks about Margaret Sullivan and the secrets that had been hidden just above her head as she slept. And she wonders what other secrets might be hiding in the walls and vents of ordinary houses, in quiet neighborhoods, waiting to be found. The file hidden in the ceiling vent had finally spoken after 25 years of silence. Its whispers had brought justice for Margaret, but they had also forever changed Rachel's understanding of the thin veneer of normalcy that covers the darkest aspects of human nature. Sometimes, she realizes, the most disturbing monsters aren't hiding under the bed or in the closet. They're hiding in plain sight, waving hello as they collect their mail or mow their lawns on sunny weekend mornings. They're the Walter Graysons of the world, the quiet ones who keep their secrets sealed in plastic and hidden away, until someone unscrews the right vent at the right time, and everything that was hidden comes tumbling out into the light. Story 10, the motel stood in quiet neglect, a relic of forgotten nights and fleeting stays. The receptionist passed her the key with a cryptic gaze. "Just avoid the final door on the left," he whispered, a hint of unease in his tone. Intrigue tugged at her curiosity. That evening, amidst the hushed corridor bathed in dim light, she hesitated before it. The doorknob chilled her touch. To the eye, it blended seamlessly with its neighbors until she pressed her ear against it. A faint breath whispered from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed wiped away drowsiness, slipping beneath the yellow tape barring entry. A metallic tang lingered in the air, a scent all too familiar. Crimson stains marred the once faded carpet, turning it nearly black. The room revealed a tale of contrasts, a pristine bathroom, an undisturbed bed, and the ghastly scene between them. A young woman lay sprawled on the floor, her golden locks splayed like a halo. Her vacant gaze met the ceiling, frozen in a silent scream. Reed knelt beside her, mindful of the evidence markers dotting the room. "Third one this season," remarked the forensic expert, his voice devoid of emotion as he captured the grim scene through his lens. "Same modus operandi as before." Reed nodded in silent acknowledgement. The victim adorned in upscale attire, a stark contrast to the motel's shabby interior. A designer handbag lay open on the bedside table, contents undisturbed. This was no random act of theft. A different motive drove this malevolent force. The motel manager lingered anxiously at the threshold, his complexion drained of color. "She checked in alone, paid in cash. I never imagined," his voice faltered. "The maid discovered her during routine cleaning." Reed surveyed the room anew. No signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds on the victim. She had either welcomed her assailant willingly or recognized them from before. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned up photographs on the board. 3 women strikingly similar, all found in rundown motels off the beaten path. Speculation swirled in the media. Rumors of a serial predator haunted the neighborhood. "Autopsy report is in," announced Detective Hayes, dropping a folder on Reed's desk. "Cause of death, manual strangulation, no DNA under the victim's nails, no indication of sexual assault." Reed furrowed her brow. "This is personal, a vendetta rather than mere predation." Days blurred together as the investigation deepened. Surveillance footage from the motel yielded no unusual sightings. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, a meticulous financial analyst with no known adversaries. Her acquaintances described her as cautious, precise, unlikely to choose such lodgings willingly. A breakthrough surfaced during Reed's interview with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man from her workplace, the sister divulged, hands trembling around her cup. "She was secretive about him, called him C. I suspect he was married." Reed leaned forward. "Any mention of a name, just C, that's all she let slip." The focus shifted to Werner's office. Colleagues painted a picture of her as reserved, strictly professional. None were privy to her personal affairs. However, a search of Werner's desk unearthed a business card tucked within a calendar. Charles Emerson, Senior Vice President. Emerson projected a flawless facade during questioning, concerned, cooperative, maintaining a safe distance. His alibi seemed airtight, dining with his spouse and another couple, but a disquiet lingered in his gaze. "Were you acquainted with Elaine Werner outside of work?" Reed inquired casually. A fleeting shadow crossed Emerson's features, imperceptible to an untrained eye, purely professional. Later that week, partial fingerprints from Werner's handbag were traced back to Emerson. When confronted, his veneer cracked. "We had a relationship," he confessed, "but I ended it. She threatened to expose me to my wife." "A reason to resort to murder?" Reed probed. Emerson's demeanor hardened. "I never set foot in that motel," yet records from the establishment told a different tale. A credit card transaction for the adjacent room charged to a corporate account linked to Emerson's firm. Upon searching that room, a hidden camera was discovered in the shared wall. The evidence mounted. Fibers from Emerson's distinctive attire matched those found on Werner's body. His DNA lingered on a watered glass in her room. Further scrutiny of his home computer unveiled similar recordings of the prior victims. A chilling pattern emerged. Emerson targeted women resembling his spouse in her youth. He lured them to designated motels, always selecting the room beside the last door on the left, a chamber prepped with surveillance gear. He documented their interactions, then returned to erase the traces the women themselves. In the interrogation room, Emerson's facade crumbled at last. "They threatened everything," he murmured. "My reputation, my marriage, my life." The trial unfolded swiftly but captivated the public. 3 families witnessed justice meted out in the sterile courtroom. Emerson exhibited no remorse, upholding the impassive mask that had served him well in the corporate realm. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without parole. As officers escorted him away, Reed locked eyes with him. For a fleeting moment, she glimpsed a void beyond his facade, not a spark of humanity, but its stark absence. The media dubbed it the door on the left saga. Psychologists delved into Emerson's psyche. Armchair detectives dissected each detail. Yet for Reed, the case lingered unresolved. Sometimes, wandering down motel corridors, she found herself counting doors, pondering the enigmas concealed within. In the evidence vault, tucked away from prying eyes, 3 identical motel keys remained tagged and logged. Tangible reminders that certain doors, once opened, lead to realms from which there is no return. Story 11. Renovations always have a way of unraveling hidden mysteries from the past. Old relics, forgotten treasures, and faded memories. Yet when Sarah and Michael decided to uplift the floorboards of their newly acquired Victorian-era home, they stumbled upon a folded letter snugly nestled beneath the aged wood. The paper was fragile, the ink weathered by time, but the words etched on it were crystal clear. "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could grasp the gravity of this cryptic message, 3 distinct knocks reverberated through the empty rooms, sending shivers down their spines. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the charm and history of the estate they purchased at an auction. Little did they anticipate that their renovation project would lead them down a path fraught with unease. Detective Alina Reed, with her seasoned partner, arrived to investigate the peculiar discovery. The floorboards lay exposed, revealing a dark void beneath. With hands weathered by years of handling evidence, Reed carefully retrieved the note, already tainted by the unwitting touch of the homeowners. As Reed delved into the couple's account of the chilling knocks, a sense of genuine fear lingered in the air. Background checks on Sarah and Michael unveiled nothing untoward. They were newlyweds with stable lives and a promising future. However, the house bore a more intricate past. It had belonged to the Hargrove family for generations, left vacant after the passing of the last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove, an elderly recluse with no known enemies or suspicious circumstances surrounding her demise. Forensic examination dated the ominous note back 2 decades. The handwriting bore traces of distress, hinting at fear or urgency. Margaret would have been in her 60s at the time, residing with her late husband, Franklin. As Reed delved deeper, interviews and records painted a picture of a troubled past. Franklin, a respected teacher turned recluse, had harbored a growing paranoia in his final years, fueled by a looming shadow from his past. A breakthrough emerged during a conversation with Margaret's sister, whose fading memory unveiled a dark secret. Margaret had feared a mysterious figure known as the Collector, a man who demanded payment for Franklin's unresolved debts. The truth unraveled further as Reed and her team unearthed a male skeleton buried beneath the foundation. Victor Mercer, the elusive loan shark and collector who had vanished without a trace 2 decades ago. Through meticulous excavation and Margaret's haunting diaries, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Franklin's desperate attempt to protect his wife had led to a tragic outcome, buried in the shadows of their home. The note, a silent witness to past horrors, served as a stark warning against misplaced trust and unresolved debts. As the case reached its conclusion, justice belatedly prevailed, offering closure to a tale stained with betrayal and fear. Sarah and Michael, burdened by the weight of the house's grim history, chose to part ways with the property, leaving it abandoned amidst whispers of the past. And in the silence of the night, a lingering mystery persists, echoed by the faint sound of 3 distinct knocks that pierce through the empty corridors. Detective Reed, in her final musings, acknowledged that some enigmas defy resolution, leaving behind a haunting legacy of unanswered questions. The letter, now preserved in evidence storage, serves as a chilling reminder of a past best left undisturbed. Margaret's silent plea, veiled in those 3 ominous knocks, lingers as a testament to the darkness that once dwelled within the walls of the Victorian-era home. Story 12, the gentle current whispered secrets that morning, the water mirroring the sky in a tranquil embrace. The fisherman's eyes lazily scanned the glassy surface, almost missing the peculiar sight of a solitary suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first glance, it seemed like a mere discard, perhaps old clothes cast away without care. But as he ventured closer, a noxious odor clawed at his senses, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The case, wrapped in chains weathered by time, revealed its sinister nature in rusted edges exposed to the elements. Authorities carefully pried open the stubborn container, expecting mundane contents. Instead, they were met with a chilling sight, hair tangled in disarray, fingers frozen in a macabre grip, and at the murky depths, a cryptic note whispered ominous words, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, a delicate handkerchief pressed to her lips to shield from the putrid air. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, lay still with dark locks and pallid skin, now marred by the touch of the water. The meticulous medical examiner diligently catalogued every detail before the body was tenderly removed from its watery grave. What struck Mercer amidst the grim tableau was not just the method of disposal, but the eerie reverence shown to the victim's appearance, manicured nails, recently styled hair, adorned in luxurious attire. As she observed the gentle lapping of the water against the muddy banks, a realization dawned on her: this was no hasty act of violence, but a carefully orchestrated presentation, a macabre exhibition. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her expertise in selling high-end properties. Divorced, childless, she dwelled alone in an affluent neighborhood, shrouded in a veil of ambition and discretion. Colleagues painted a portrait of a woman dedicated to her craft, meticulous in her ways, fiercely private in her dealings. A poignant absence loomed as her assistant recounted the events leading to her disappearance, a crucial showing to affluent clients, a potential commission that would have marked a pinnacle in her career. The assistant's voice trembled with conviction, adamant that Catherine would never abandon such an opportunity willingly. The investigation unfurled into Walsh's meticulously curated modernist abode, a sanctuary of perfection with designer trappings meticulously arranged. Yet a subtle aberration caught the detective's eyes: a slightly ajar drawer in her home office. Within, nestled among forgotten trinkets, lay a leather-bound journal. The final entry bore cryptic words: "He's watching again. Same car, different plates." As digital breadcrumbs painted a cryptic trail in Walsh's online footprint, anonymous messages hinting at an observer fixated on her perfection, searches for security measures to safeguard her sanctuary, Detective Mercer pieced together a chilling mosaic. The crime scene's eerie precision, the victim's immaculate display, all whispered of a sinister choreography, a ritualistic dance of darkness. A breakthrough veiled in shadows emerged from an unlikely source, a pawnshop proprietor recognizing Walsh's emerald necklace, conspicuously absent from her possessions. The culprit, Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker, emerged from the shadows of anonymity. Surveillance footage unveiled his clandestine visits to Walsh's domain, a silent predator lurking in the shadows of her success. In Linden's modest dwelling, a chilling gallery unfolded walls adorned with clandestine portraits of Walsh and other women, each bearing a striking resemblance, each captured in moments of vulnerability. A secret chamber unveiled a shrine to his victims, a macabre tableau of personal effects meticulously catalogued, a haunting testimony to his twisted fixation. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, Linden's facade of normalcy cracked, revealing a chilling resolve beneath a mask of tranquility. "They were imperfect," he uttered, devoid of remorse. "Their perfection a facade I could not abide. Catherine's flaw lay hidden in chaos, in imperfections only I could rectify." The search for the shadows of the past unraveled the fates of 2 additional victims, their remains unearthed in remote locales within desolate suitcases. Each bore the hallmarks of Linden's meticulous artistry, a morbid tapestry woven from lives he deemed flawed, lives he sought to perfect in his twisted vision. As Linden faced the somber halls of justice, his stoic demeanor a facade concealing dark depths, the families of the fallen watched in sorrow as justice unfolded. For Detective Mercer, the case closed with a finality tinged with unanswered questions. What inner demons propelled Linden on his path of darkness? What fractured mirror of self-reflection drove him to seek perfection in the imperfections of others? The river whispered its ancient lullaby, carrying away the vestiges of a chilling chapter. Yet in the hushed precinct, amidst the fading echoes of a nightmare, rested copies of Linden's chilling journals, a stark reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, shadows lurk, waiting for a moment of vulnerability to unfurl their chilling embrace. In the quiet of the night, in the stillness of slumber, the secrets of the hidden predators weave their web, a chilling reminder that even in the realm of dreams, darkness may find its insidious hold. Story 13. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Everything appeared normal, her face, her attire. Yet an unsettling feeling crept in as she continued to stare. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement that wasn't hers. When she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. This marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's enigmatic journey. What transpired would puzzle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided in a humble apartment in a serene suburban area, leading a solitary life. Known for her systematic nature and reserved demeanor, she kept to herself while maintaining a friendly rapport with her neighbors. A data analyst by profession, her days were structured around routine and precision. No one would have suspected that she would become the focal point of one of the most bewildering criminal enigmas of the era. Initially, the anomalies seemed trivial. Objects in Rebecca's home were subtly rearranged, a coffee mug shifted to a different shelf, books reorganized, her toothbrush out of place. She attributed these occurrences to fatigue-induced absent-mindedness, a consequence of long hours scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights. Detective Marion Shaw was notified when Rebecca, after weeks of these disturbances, finally sought help from the authorities. The initial evaluation suggested no criminal activity. It appeared more suitable for mental health services than law enforcement. Shaw documented the complaint but classified it among the less urgent cases. There was no concrete evidence, Shaw later testified. No signs of forced entry, no missing items, just a woman sensing something amiss in her own abode. The pivotal moment arrived with the incident in the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection seemed to move independently, creating an eerie sensation of being watched even in solitude. This time she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, aimed at her front door. The recording unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The video captured Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, followed by an identical figure entering her residence with a key 20 minutes later. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, but found none. The intruder moved and dressed like Rebecca, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, Rebecca's workplace security system confirmed she had already swiped into her office building miles away. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with uncanny precision." The investigation intensified. Fingerprints found in the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA was detected. Neighbors reported nothing unusual, merely observing Rebecca's usual comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, mentioned a peculiar incident where Rebecca did not respond when greeted upon returning home, an atypical behavior that raised no immediate alarm. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her living space escalated unexplained food disappearance from the refrigerator, unauthorized searches on her computer, and unsettling discoveries of selfies on her phone that she had no recollection of taking. In some images, her expression appeared subtly distorted, the smile too wide, the eyes too intense. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," she confided in Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this to make me believe so." The breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific pre-planned engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs. These were activities with predictable durations, highlighting an intricate knowledge of her routine. "Someone is intimately familiar with your schedule," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's a targeted surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist posited that they were dealing with a fixation case, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such instances, though rare, were documented in psychological literature. Typically, the culprit had undergone a psychological rupture and fixated on a victim embodying traits they desired: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus narrowed on a former colleague of Rebecca's, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often commenting on their resemblances. Following her dismissal, she sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails, one stating, "We could be identical," and another declaring, "At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence, unveiling a chilling revelation that transformed the case from perplexing to horrifying. A room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were adorned with hundreds of clandestine photographs of Rebecca engaged in daily activities, all taken without her knowledge. A closet housed duplicates of Rebecca's attire, while a vanity displayed makeup brands identical to Rebecca's, accompanied by detailed notes on her mannerisms, speech patterns, and routines. Most unsettling were the practice videos wherein Lily mimicked Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions, progressing from awkward attempts to near-perfect replication. "She aspired to become me," a hushed Rebecca uttered upon viewing the evidence. She wasn't merely imitating me, she was erasing me. Forensic specialists uncovered sophisticated equipment for replicating keys and cloning electronic access cards. Lily had meticulously monitored Rebecca's movements, maintaining a detailed calendar predicting her schedule. What remained elusive was Lily's ultimate motive. Journals recovered from her residence contained erratic entries fluctuating between first and third person, sporadically referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same passage. The concluding entry sent shivers down the investigators' spines. Soon, only one of us will endure. The stronger version shall prevail. Upon authorities' attempt to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her apartment displayed signs of abrupt departure, open drawers, missing technology. A nationwide alert was issued, and Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under continuous surveillance. For 3 weeks, every locale linked to her previous life was meticulously monitored, yet Lily remained elusive. The case took a chilling turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave and under protection at a secure facility, Rebecca was sighted entering the building. Security footage confirmed a figure identical to Rebecca using a valid ID card to access the premises, proceeding to her former workstation and rifling through her files for 40 minutes before departing. The inconceivable became apparent. Lily had not fled, she had made her move. She now inhabited Rebecca's life, assuming her identity, while the authentic Rebecca remained concealed. The case officially remains unresolved. Lily Winters remains at large, and Rebecca Thorne opted not to return to her former existence, crafting a new persona at an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk depicting 2 strikingly similar women, one as Rebecca Thorne, the other as Lily Winters. Occasionally, she scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities that set them apart. The truly unsettling aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits is not merely resembling someone or sounding like them. It's the fervor to become that person to the extent of erasing oneself in the process. Our identity isn't solely our outward projection, it's our most guarded possession. Sometimes we fail to recognize its worth until someone endeavors to usurp it. Story 14. In the quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious package arrived for Sarah Miller. Wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address, it held a single brass key worn with time. Its presence was unsettling, a whisper of familiarity in the unknown. Sarah tried the key in every lock she owned, but none turned. It didn't belong to her. Yet when she placed it on the coffee table, the old grandfather clock let out a single hollow chime, despite being broken for years. Authorities were called, and what began as an oddity soon unraveled into a disturbing investigation. The responding officer, at first dismissive, took the key as evidence to calm Sarah's unease. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator, sensed the weight of the case as the brass key sat on his desk, quietly foreboding. Background checks revealed Sarah's innocence, a retired teacher with no hint of a dark past. Forensic searches found only her fingerprints on the key. The envelope revealed nothing, just a generic postmark. The key itself, a standard Schlage, seemed unremarkable yet held a sinister past. A breakthrough came when Harmon discovered a matching key pattern in an old cold case. The key led to a storage unit with a grim history, blood-stained carpets, cutting tools, and photos of unidentified women. The original investigation had hit a dead end, but now a new path emerged. Sarah, unfamiliar with the women in the photos, grew anxious, fortifying her home. The key's purpose remained a mystery. Was it a trophy, a warning, or something more sinister? The search narrowed to Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's, now vanished without a trace. Jenkins, a ghost in the digital age, left no trail behind, but beneath his mother's cabin, a chilling chamber was uncovered, filled with brass keys, each marking a victim. The manhunt intensified as hidden horrors came to light, and Jenkins, dubbed the Keymaster, remained at large. The community held its breath as the search expanded, culminating in a dramatic confrontation. Jenkins, cornered, chose death over capture, leaving a journal and a haunting message for Sarah. The investigation unveiled a web of darkness, revealing 32 victims and the true extent of Jenkins' depravity. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, never returned home, haunted by the knowledge of evil lurking nearby. The grandfather clock's chime, once a curious anomaly, now a sinister reminder of Jenkins' watchful eye. The case stands as a cautionary tale, a reminder that monsters can wear ordinary faces. As researchers delve into Jenkins' writings, seeking to prevent such horrors in the future, a collection of silent brass keys sits in an evidence locker, a somber testament to lives lost and the chilling truth that sometimes the most terrifying evil hides in plain sight. Story 15. The dwelling had sat deserted for countless seasons. Whispers from neighbors murmured that no inhabitant had graced its rooms since the day the young woman vanished into the shadows of the night. Yet as the new occupants crossed the threshold, they encountered a peculiar sight, the bedroom sealed shut from within. With effort they forced the door ajar, unveiling a room cloaked in stagnant air, burdened with the weight of neglect. But amidst the stillness, a sense of unease lingered. The bed lay neatly arranged, the looking glass gleamed spotless. On the writing desk, a lone candle had surrendered to time, its wax sweeping frozen tears onto the surface. And there, amidst the stillness, lay a notebook, its pages adorned with fresh ink. The final entry bore the date of her disappearance. Detective Morgan delved into the contents of the notebook as forensic experts combed the room for traces of the past. The elegant script belonged to Elise Winters, aged 26, reported missing by her kin nearly half a decade earlier. Her writing danced gracefully across the pages until the last entry, where the pen had etched with vigor, leaving imprints on the blank sheets beyond. "I sense his gaze upon me tonight," the final words whispered. "The same car has circled thrice. I've reached out for aid, yet no soul heeds my plea. If fate befalls me, know it was no chance encounter." With a solemn reverence, the detective secured the notebook in an evidence pouch. A subtle blend of dust and an elusive chemical scent hung in the air. The landlord lingered in the doorway, features drained of color, arms folded in a defensive stance. "We meticulously combed through every chamber ere listing it for rent," he muttered. "That portal was never locked." Elise had served as a paralegal at Harriman and Associates, a prestigious legal entity entwined in high-stakes corporate affairs. Colleagues painted her as a meticulous soul, devoted yet increasingly withdrawn in the days leading to her vanishing. She began lingering after hours, her supervisor disclosed to the investigators, mentioned stumbling upon irregularities within the Westridge acquisition files, numbers altered, documents retroactively dated. The detective scrutinized portraits of Elise auburn tresses, solemn gaze framed by spectacles, perpetually garbed in professional attire. The woman captured in those images appeared too methodical to fade into obscurity, too structured to abandon without a trace. The bedroom divulged scant clues, no hint of strife, no vestige of blood, merely a frozen moment suspended in time as if Elise had momentarily stepped away, destined to return. The candle on the desk, a relic of bygone flames, exuded a scentless pallor. Beneath it, the wooden surface bore the scars of its silent vigil. "What revelations have you unearthed?" Morgan inquired of the laid forensic examiner. Multiple sets of fingerprints, weathered by age, yet the intriguing facet lies in the absence. The knob was purged of prints both within and without, likewise the window fastenings. The investigative team dismantled the baseboards, probed behind outlets, and prodded for concealed recesses. When a loose floorboard near the closet yielded a hidden cache, a compact waterproof vessel housing a flash drive and a key, their quest gained momentum. The key granted access to a safe deposit box at Northern Trust Bank, unveiling a secondary flash drive and a cache of documents. The papers unveiled a web of financial transactions between Westridge Pharmaceuticals and offshore accounts linked to several associates at Harriman and Associates. Digital sleuths resurrected the contents of both drives, unveiling audio snippets and spreadsheets chronicling manipulated data from Westridge's flagship drug, Neurapax. The recordings echoed with Elise's voice intertwined with that of a man identified as Vincent Harriman, a senior luminary within the firm. "These figures must remain clandestine," Harriman intoned in one excerpt. "The adverse effects manifested in near 40% of subjects, not the paltry 4% we publicized. Should this leak, the firm collapses and Westridge's stocks plummet overnight. Lives hang in the balance," Elise countered. The seizures materialize precisely as the original data forewarned. "This exchange shall be erased from memory," Harriman asserted. "Recall, what is spoken within these walls remains confined here, for all our sakes." Detective Morgan liaised with pharmaceutical overseers, who affirmed the discreet withdrawal of Neurapax from the market post a cluster of fatalities aligning with the side effects catalogued in Elise's concealed records. Subpoenas unfurled Harriman's personal and corporate archives. No direct link to Elise's disappearance surfaced until traces of an industrial cleansing service emerged at his vacation estate on the day she vanished. A subsequent inspection unearthed minuscule traces of blood aligning with Elise's genetic blueprint, despite the thorough scouring. Though circumstantial, the evidence painted a damning tableau. The enigma of the locked chamber persisted until Morgan scrutinized security footage from neighboring abodes. A figure mirroring Harriman's silhouette materialized at the house on the fateful eve of Elise's vanishing, escorted by torrential rain. The footage documented his ingress, yet no exit was captured by any discernible means. Returning to the bedroom with a structural artisan, they exposed a concealed passage nestled at the rear of the closet, linking to subterranean maintenance conduits spanning blocks of antiquated residences in the vicinity. The passage had been veiled with fresh drywall, a seamless facade mirroring the original partition. Vincent Harriman faced arrest mid-board meeting. When confronted with the compilation of evidence, he adamantly professed innocence, attributing Elise's demise to a concoction of instability and paranoia. She fabricated evidence to tarnish the firm post her promotion snub, he maintained under interrogation. The jury dissented. Footage salvaged from Elise's covert camera, ensconced within a bookend on her shelf, captured Harriman's ingress into her sanctum that ill-fated night. The recording abruptly ceased as he approached her desk, where she sat transcribing her thoughts. Prosecutors postulated that following Elise's demise, Harriman secured the room from within utilizing a rudimentary ploy involving string and a hook, vanishing through the concealed passageway. He revisited years later, ere the new occupant's arrival, to ensure no vestige lingered to implicate him. Unwittingly, he preserved the tableau precisely as investigators necessitated. Harriman received a conviction for first-degree murder, despite the absence of her mortal remains. The pharmaceutical barons embroiled in the deceit faced discreet indictments. Families of patients succumbing to Neurapax's side effects initiated a collective lawsuit unmasking institutional malfeasance. At the sentencing, Elise's mother imparted her soliloquy to the courts. "My daughter's chamber remained untouched, safeguarding the verity she sacrificed her existence to unveil. She never vacated that haven, not truly. Her quest for rectitude lingered within, awaiting revelation. The prospective lessees opted against the occupation. The edifice now stands vacant once more, its secrets laid bare yet not exorcised. Locals shun the vicinity post-dusk, averting their gaze from the enigmatic abode. Some profess sightings of an ethereal glow in the upper casement, the chamber where a maiden made her final stand against potent figures who deemed their sins impervious to light. Justice sought out Elise Winters, not in life, but in the legacy she bequeathed. The room she never truly departed metamorphosed into her sepulchre and testament. Story 16. In the quiet stillness of the night, she felt the urge to transform the nursery, to erase the faded blue of the walls that held secrets untold. With gentle strokes, the white paint unfolded a hidden tale, letters emerging like whispers from the past. Don't let it hear you. Her heart skipped a beat as she stumbled backward, her gaze drawn to tiny handprints etched in the fresh paint, too high for any child to reach. The revelation within the walls of the Morgan residence marked the genesis of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple, unaware of the home's dark legacy, had acquired the Victorian-style dwelling at an unbelievably low price, deceived by the omission of its troubling history by the real estate agent. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, arrived at the doorstep, greeted by a pregnant woman, exhaustion etched in her eyes. Trembling, she recounted the chilling discovery of the message and handprints, revealing the abrupt departure of the previous owners under mysterious circumstances. Inside the historic abode, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed through time-worn corridors as she examined the nursery's haunting message, still visible beneath the unfinished paint. Beside it, 5 small handprints, a ghostly imprint of the past left at an adult's height. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into the property's tumultuous past, uncovering a pattern of transient occupants and unsettling child welfare reports. The house had once belonged to Alina Blackwood, a widow who ran an orphanage within its walls, where 5 children vanished without a trace. As the detective pieced together the puzzle, she unearthed accounts of eerie incidents reported by former residents, each culminating in a cryptic warning scrawled on the nursery walls whenever repainted. The investigation took a chilling turn as ground-penetrating radar unveiled a harrowing truth beneath the basement floor. 5 child-sized shapes, a macabre revelation of the orphan's fate. Forensic analysis confirmed the grim reality, leading to the proper burial of the long-forgotten victims, their names finally etched in history as murder victims at the hands of Alina Blackwood. Amidst the shadows of the nursery, Luminol revealed a spectral display of handprints, a silent plea from the departed souls. Alina's journals exposed her sinister motives, her belief in harnessing the life force of orphaned children for her own gain, a twisted legacy that haunted the house through the ages. As the house stood empty, shunned by all who knew its grim history, Detective Klein's final report bore witness to the unexplainable echoes that lingered within its walls, whispers of lost innocence and unspeakable deeds. The nursery walls, witnesses to unspeakable horrors, were torn down, yet the voices of the past persisted, a testament to the enduring legacy of Alina Blackwood's malevolence. The condemned house became a relic of forgotten tragedies, a chilling reminder that some crimes transcend time and space, leaving indelible marks that no amount of paint can conceal. And as the night fell, the whispers of the children echoed through the darkness, a haunting requiem for the lost souls whose voices would never be silenced. Story 17. In the quiet stillness of the night, a tale unfolded within the walls of a Victorian-era home that Michael and Sarah Klein had never expected. It began innocently enough, with what appeared to be just peeling wallpaper in the master bedroom. But as they delicately peeled back the layers, a haunting narrative emerged, whispering secrets of the past. Hidden beneath the surface, scrawled in ink, was the name Elena Winters, repeated endlessly in a frantic, uneven script. This mysterious name, unfamiliar to them, seemed to hold a weight of untold stories, a name that resonated through time and space. As curiosity gripped their hearts, Michael and Sarah embarked on a journey of discovery. A simple search online unveiled a chilling connection: the missing persons case of Elena Winters, a young woman who had vanished without a trace decades ago. The eerie resemblance between Elena and the woman who had sold them the house, Margaret Cavendish, sent shivers down their spines. The charm of their new home now tinged with an unsettling mystery. Michael and Sarah delved deeper into the enigma that surrounded them. Their obsession grew, fueled by a desire to unravel the truth behind the cryptic writings on the wall. With each passing day, the boundaries between past and present blurred as they unearthed hidden truths and long-buried secrets. The walls of their home seemed to hold echoes of a tragedy long forgotten, a story waiting to be told. As they pieced together fragments of the past, a dark shadow loomed over them. The revelation that emerged would shake them to their core, altering their perception of reality forever. The tangled web of identities, the fractured mind behind the writings, it all pointed to a chilling truth that sent shivers down their spines. But justice, though delayed, eventually prevailed. The excavation of the backyard unearthed the remains of Elena Winters, bringing closure to a case that had haunted them for so long. And as the true identity of Margaret Cavendish was revealed, a sense of closure washed over the once quiet home. In the end, Michael and Sarah's dream home became a haunting reminder of a past that refused to stay buried. The walls themselves whispered of a tragedy that had unfolded within their midst, leaving them with a story that would be forever etched in the annals of history. And as the night enveloped them in its gentle embrace, the mysteries of the past faded into the realm of dreams, lulling them into a peaceful slumber, where reality and imagination danced in the twilight hours of the mind. Story 18, the Costume Emporium, was on the verge of closing its doors, a hushed air of finality settling over the shop as it sold off its ancient wares. Among the remnants of forgotten disguises, a woman's hand brushed against a peculiar mask resting on a dusty shelf. Its delicate features bore an unsettling, lifelike quality, drawing her in with a mysterious allure. Placing it on the counter, she watched as the cashier hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "That's not ours," he mumbled, his voice tinged with an unspoken warning. Perplexed, the woman glanced for a tag but found none, deciding to take the enigmatic mask home with her, its secrets hidden behind its eerie fard. As the night draped its velvet darkness over her home, she stirred from slumber to a faint rustle, a whisper of fabric shifting in the silence. With a racing heart, she searched the room only to find the mask missing from its place on the dresser. There it sat, perched on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her, a silent sentinel in the shadows. This woman, known as Catherine Reed, would later be discovered by her concerned neighbor, the morning light spilling like liquid gold through the slightly ajar door, casting an ethereal glow upon the scene that awaited. The neighbor, arriving to return a borrowed book, instead stumbled upon a tableau that would linger in the minds of investigators for years to come. Catherine lay motionless upon her bedroom floor, the mask vanished without a trace. Detective Morgan arrived on the scene, the click of shutters punctuating the hushed tones as forensics meticulously documented the eerie setting. No forced entry, murmured an officer, his pen scratching against paper. The detective, her eyes scanning the room with a keen intensity, noted the subtle details: a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, ordinary yet tinged with an ominous undercurrent in the presence of the lifeless figure before them. The medical examiner, his expression somber, found no immediate cause of death upon initial inspection. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle, he intoned, gesturing towards Catherine's frozen visage of terror. Leaning in for a closer examination, the detective whispered. Something frightened her to her core. In life, Catherine had been an art appraiser, a woman of precision and passion for authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her discerning eye, the ability to detect the subtlest of discrepancies. Could this very gift have unwittingly sealed her tragic fate? Footage from the costume shop revealed a perplexing encounter between the cashier and the mysterious mask, the owner disavowing any knowledge of its origin. Visiting the now barren shop, the detective confronted the owner, unraveling a tale of inexplicable occurrences linked to items from a deceased collector's estate. A trail of enigmatic deaths intertwined with the acquisition of these cursed artifacts, each victim bearing the mask's sinister gaze in their final moments. A breakthrough emerged as forensics unearthed microscopic fibers clutched in Catherine's grasp, a peculiar blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance defying classification. The investigation unveiled a chilling pattern of deaths mirroring Catherine's, each shrouded in the mask's malevolent presence, their expressions etched in terror, their fates unresolved. Consulting with a retired detective, the truth began to unravel, ancient symbols hidden within the masks hinting at a macabre ritual of soul transference. Catherine's journal, a clandestine discovery behind a loose panel, chronicled her descent into a realm of dread and obsession. The mask, a sentient force preying on those who dared to peer beyond its facade, seeking hosts to perpetuate its insidious cycle of fear and death. With the enigma deepening, surveillance footage unveiled a chilling revelation: a figure cloaked in darkness, donning the mask, its movements mirroring Catherine's but devoid of humanity, a puppeteer orchestrating a macabre dance of possession. The mask vanished once more, resurfacing in a distant vintage shop, its ominous allure drawing a new unsuspecting soul into its grasp. The detective, haunted by Catherine's journal, guards a chilling truth that eludes official explanation. In the dead of night, a shiver of unease grips her, a primal instinct warning of unseen eyes fixed upon her. She locks her doors, banishing thoughts of the mask's return, knowing that somewhere out there it awaits its next victim, a vessel hungry for the essence of life. The cycle persists, a dark legacy spanning centuries, a silent specter that moves unseen, a harbinger of dread lurking in the shadows, biding its time until it finds a new face to wear, a new life to consume. Story 19, the old library faced its final chapter as demolition loomed. Workers toiled diligently, their efforts nearing completion, when a serendipitous misstep unveiled a concealed latch within a dusty bookshelf. With a hushed click, the shelf swung open, revealing a clandestine passage leading to a forgotten chamber. The air within hung heavy, stagnant with the weight of time's passage. In that secret room, devoid of furnishings save for a solitary chair affixed firmly to the floor, a chilling declaration marred the walls: "I am still here." The construction foreman swiftly summoned law enforcement as what began as routine demolition spiraled into a sinister enigma. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, stood amidst the eerie scene, his flashlight piercing the darkness to expose the unsettling message etched repeatedly across the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded, his voice resonating in the enclosed space. No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrives. The library's history wove a tapestry of intrigue. Once owned by the esteemed Harrington family, the building had been bequeathed to the public following the enigmatic disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her final year at college, Rebecca left behind no trace save for her abandoned car near the woods. Despite exhaustive searches and inquiries, the mystery remained unsolved, with her family steadfastly rejecting the notion of her voluntary departure, insisting a darker truth lurked beneath the surface. As forensic experts meticulously combed the hidden chamber, minute traces of hair, fibers, blood, and skin cells intertwined with the chair's weathered straps hinted at a tumultuous struggle endured by a young female captive. Walsh, sensing a connection to the Harrington lineage, delved deeper into the family's past. The timing of the library's donation following Rebecca's vanishing tugged at his instincts, hinting at a correlation too palpable to ignore. Further scrutiny uncovered a troubling revelation. The contractor who installed the bookshelf had exclusive ties to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and patriarch of the family. Financial transactions hinted at covert dealings, while testimonies from former library staff painted a portrait of Maxwell's secretive endeavors within the building's confines. The investigation reached a chilling climax when DNA evidence from the hidden room linked back to Rebecca's genetic profile. The grim truth unraveled with each piece of evidence, exposing a heinous betrayal within the family's ranks. Maxwell's study yielded a damning journal, chronicling his perverse fixation on his niece and the harrowing lengths he went to in order to silence her. Confronted with irrefutable proof, Maxwell's stoic veneer shattered, unveiling a chilling confession of betrayal and murder. His elaborate scheme to conceal Rebecca's fate crumbled under the weight of justice, as excavations beneath the hidden room unearthed her remains, clad in a poignant reminder of lost innocence. Maxwell faced the consequences of his malevolence, his sentence a somber coda to a tragic tale. Amidst the rubble of the halted demolition, the community gathered to honor Rebecca's memory, laying flowers at the library's threshold as a tribute to a life unjustly extinguished. In a poignant twist, Rebecca's haunting message, etched in desperation, ensured her eternal presence, a beacon of truth amid shadows of deceit. And in the end, justice prevailed, casting light upon the darkness that had long festered behind the walls of the old library. Story 20. It began with a pocket dial, a mere whisper of static and muffled sounds drifting through the phone line. The operator hesitated, almost dismissing it as an accidental call, until a voice broke through the haze. A woman's voice filled with urgency and fear, barely audible as she uttered, "He's here." Then an eerie silence descended, swallowing the words whole. The mysterious call had originated from an empty house, a dwelling long forsaken by its inhabitants, cloaked in a shroud of abandonment for years on end. No traces of forced entry marred the quiet abode, no disturbances in the stillness of its rooms. Yet amidst the layers of dust coating the kitchen surfaces, there sat a phone, innocuous yet inexplicably significant, its screen casting an ethereal glow in the dim light. The call had been placed mere moments before. Detective Morgan Reed found herself inexorably drawn to the enigma of that whisper, replaying the haunting message repeatedly, each iteration sending a shiver down her spine. The voice, desperate and terrified, echoed in her mind, an enigma wrapped in impossibility. The abandoned property, once belonging to the Sullivan family, stood as a solemn witness to a tragic past, scarred by a devastating house fire that had ravaged its west wing. Since the Sullivans' departure, the house had stood empty, its caretaker making sporadic visits to ensure its preservation, attesting adamantly to its desolate solitude. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The revelation that the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the family, added another layer of perplexity to the unfolding mystery. Catherine had perished in a car accident 3 years prior, her absence a palpable void in the lives of those who had known her. As Morgan scrutinized the evidence bag containing the phone, a sense of disquiet settled upon her. A spectral phone call originating from a vacant house, a spectral link to a departed soul it defied all rational explanation. The forensic examination yielded no tangible leads, no fingerprints save for elusive smudges that defied identification. The house remained sealed, untouched by human presence, a stark contradiction to the inexplicable call. The recorded message, a mere 11 seconds of static, of labored breaths and 5 chilling words, emerged as the focal point of their investigation. Voice analysis confirmed a startling resemblance to Catherine Sullivan's voice, drawn from archived recordings with an unsettling 98% certainty. The timestamp, a cruel twist of fate, aligned precisely with the moment of Catherine's tragic demise 3 years prior, as if time itself had folded upon that spectral connection. Morgan and Walsh delved into Catherine's past, interviewing those who had known her intimately. Her father, now remarried, bore a mask of bewilderment, while her mother, a solitary figure in a modest apartment, crumbled under the weight of the unearthed message. "That's my Katie," she whispered, her voice trembling with sorrow. "She sounds so scared." Mark Jennings, Catherine's boyfriend at the time of her passing, provided an alibi for the night of the spectral call, his whereabouts corroborated by alibis and surveillance footage. The vacant house stood as a spectral witness, a silent sentinel to the inexplicable connection that defied reason. The investigation reached an impasse until a call from Catherine's mother breathed new life into the cold case. "I found something in her belongings," she confided, her voice quivering with trepidation. "Katie kept a journal, the final entry. You must see it." Within the pages of Catherine's journal lay a harrowing account of her tumultuous relationship with Mark, a narrative of love soured by control, of isolation and mounting fear. The final entry, a chilling testament to her dread, bore the ominous words, "He discovered my intentions to leave. His rage knows no bounds. If harm befalls me, it is no mere accident." Confronted anew, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of Catherine's written words. Denials rang hollow in the face of damning evidence, his protestations mere echoes in the chamber of justice. The accident report, scrutinized with renewed scrutiny, unveiled a chilling revelation. Mark had been the first responder to the scene, preceding emergency services in a macabre twist of fate. Revisiting the site of Catherine's tragic accident, investigators unearthed a grim secret buried beneath the earth: her actual phone, concealed 20 feet from the crash site, a damning testament to Mark's malevolence. Forensic analysis laid bare a trail of deleted texts, a digital testament to Catherine's final moments of terror as Mark pursued her with lethal intent. Re-examining the evidence with fresh eyes, the medical examiner discerned a grim truth hidden in plain sight. Catherine's injuries bore the hallmarks of a struggle, of a life snuffed out by violence masked as misfortune. As the net closed around Mark, he evaded capture, leaving behind a chilling tableau of obsession and malice within his lair. A manhunt ensued, culminating in a chilling revelation as officers converged upon the Sullivan house, drawn by the siren call of justice. Within its walls they found Mark, a specter of malevolence, his gaze fixed upon a phone identical to Catherine's, a twisted tribute to his crimes. In custody, Mark's facade crumbled, his confession a litany of horrors unleashed upon unsuspecting souls. "She refused to be silenced," he murmured to Morgan, his words laden with malice. "Even in death she accused me. I needed the world to hear her voice, to believe she lingered beyond the veil. A ghost, bereft of justice, cannot testify against me." The trial that followed was swift, a reckoning long overdue. The jury's verdict of guilty reverberated through the courtroom, a testament to Catherine's enduring legacy of courage and resilience. As the echoes of justice resounded, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest, a beacon of truth amidst the shadows of deceit. The abandoned phone, a relic of spectral communication, now rests in the evidence locker, its silent vigil a testament to the enduring power of a victim's voice. Officers whisper of phantom rings, of spectral echoes that defy explanation, a testament to Catherine's unyielding spirit that transcends mortal bounds. Catherine's tale lives on, not as a ghostly fable, but as a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to be silenced, even in death. In her words, her fears etched in ink, lies the legacy of a soul unbound by the confines of mortality, a beacon of hope in the darkness of injustice. Story 21, the aged envelope, its corners tinged with yellow, bore a fresh stamp just sent days prior. With cautious hands, the detective unfolded it. Enclosed within was a solitary sheet of paper, its message hastily typed in an uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did." A dampness clung to the paper, carrying a faint scent of iron. It was then that the reddish streak along the bottom caught their eye. Not ink. Detective Sarah Morgan carefully placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved fingers moving with practiced precision. The forensic team had already confirmed her suspicions. The reddish stain was human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved homicide that had haunted the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop missing, notes scattered a grim tableau hinting at a story gone awry. Despite countless interviews and tireless investigation, the case had gone cold. And now this mysterious letter had found its way to the precinct, addressed simply to Homicide Division. The paper and envelope yielded few fingerprints, only smudges hinting at gloved hands, the postmark a glimmer of hope amidst the stagnation. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, the walls adorned with snapshots of crime scenes, timelines, and fruitless leads. She affixed the letter's image at the heart of the board. "This changes everything," she declared. "Our killer bears remorse." Detective James Chen, her longtime partner in the case, scrutinized the letter. "Or wishes us to believe so," he countered. The blood a macabre touch, a taunt perhaps. The forensics team traced the unique typewriter impressions to a model long out of production, a rarity but not impossible to acquire. They reached out to antique stores and collectors across the region. As the investigation gained traction, they delved into Rebecca's past. Her editor painted a picture of a relentless investigator unearthing corruption. Her last assignment entailed probing a wealthy family entangled in local politics. The patriarch's recent passing had left behind a web of intrigue, with siblings at odds over inheritance. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled subtle shifts in his demeanor upon the letter's emergence, furtive glances, tremors in his hands. "She spoke of being followed," he confessed. "I dismissed it as paranoia tied to her investigation. I should have listened." While the detectives pursued this lead, a second letter materialized. Same typewriter, same blood, this time a lengthier confession. She unearthed too much about the family. The inheritance, the patriarch's demise, it was never meant to escalate. Their inquiries led them to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they interrogated the eldest son, Richard. Amidst his collection of antiques lay vintage typewriters. His explanations sounded rehearsed, polished. A breakthrough arrived with the discovery of microscopic fibers on the envelopes, matching stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Elena. She disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery weeks prior. A search of Richard's abode unveiled a concealed chamber, housing clippings of Rebecca, surveillance stills, and a vintage typewriter akin to the one in question. Blood analysis confirmed it belonged to Rebecca. Unexpectedly, a financial link emerged between Richard and Michael, significant payments preceding Rebecca's demise. Confronted, Michael crumbled. She found evidence of Richard poisoning his father, he confessed. I relayed the information, thinking to intimidate her into silence. I never imagined he would kill her. The final puzzle piece surfaced with Elena's recording, capturing Richard and Michael plotting Rebecca's fate. In a damning statement, Richard's voice rang clear. She must be silenced permanently. Richard's arrest unfolded as he sought to flee. The prosecution wove a narrative around the letters, the typewriter, the financial transactions, and Elena's recording. Michael struck a deal, offering testimony in exchange. At trial, Richard professed innocence, accusing Michael of framing him, yet the evidence stood firm. The jury's swift verdict sealed Richard's fate. As he was led away, handcuffed, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents in the hushed courtroom. No words could assuage their loss, but justice brought a semblance of peace. The blood-stained letters lingered in evidence, a somber reminder that even the most meticulous schemes leave traces, and that remorse, be it genuine or feigned, can unravel those who believe in the perfection of their deeds. Rebecca Warren's case became a beacon in detective lore, teaching the next generation that breakthroughs often arise from the simplest of sources, like an ancient typewriter and the burden of guilt weighing upon a killer's soul. Story 22. The apartment had sat in silence for months, a vacant space waiting to be filled with life once more. When the new tenants stepped through the threshold, their expectations were low, perhaps some dust, a few remnants of the past left behind. However, one door stubbornly resisted their attempts to open it. It was a closet, its secrets locked away on the inside. After much effort, the landlord managed to pry the door open, revealing a sight that sent shivers down the spines of all who beheld it. The walls bore witness to a silent struggle, etched with deep, jagged scratches that spoke of desperation and fear. And nestled in the corner, a relic of the past, an old flip phone, its screen still illuminated by a single unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, felt a chill creep down her spine as she surveyed the scene before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or violence that unnerved her, but the haunting story told by those relentless scratch marks a tale of confinement and battle for freedom. "We need forensics now," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the evidence before them, "and gather all the records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone simply whispered, "I know what you did." The landlord, a man with nervous eyes and trembling hands, revealed that the previous tenant had vanished suddenly, leaving behind unpaid rent. "A young woman kept to herself," he murmured, avoiding the closet's gaze. "Quiet, no trouble." Forensics uncovered a chilling truth within the scratches: multiple blood samples, most belonging to a single individual identified as Emma Caldwell, missing for 6 months. But there were 2 other DNA traces. One remained a mystery, while the other belonged to a man declared deceased 2 years prior, Derek Mercer, a convicted criminal. Shaw's brow furrowed in confusion as she studied the perplexing findings. Derek Mercer's DNA, fresh and undeniable, intertwined with Emma's tale of captivity. Emma's apartment whispered of an interrupted existence, unopened mail, a solitary coffee mug in the sink, a neatly arranged bed. Her phone records hinted at a sudden silence, broken only by calls from an unknown number in the days leading to her disappearance. Her sister mentioned a new boyfriend, intense and private, Officer Reed revealed, piecing together the fragments of Emma's life. Surveillance footage captured a shadowy figure, cloaked in secrecy, trailing Emma into the building one fateful night. The revelation came with the discovery of partial fingerprints on the closet door, a damning link to Derek Mercer, who had seemingly risen from the dead to haunt Emma's past. He staged his own death, Shaw concluded, her mind racing to unravel the twisted web connecting Emma, Derek, and another missing woman, Lynette Porter. A car belonging to Derek's family frequented the vicinity of Emma's residence, the driver's features aligning with Derek's profile. The investigation led them to a secluded property owned by the Mercer family, where a harrowing truth awaited beneath the heavy doors of the basement. Lynette Porter, a ghost of the past, emerged emaciated, traumatized, echoing Emma's nightmare. "He wanted me to witness," Lynette murmured, her eyes vacant with horror, "to learn the price of defiance." Journals, photographs, and chilling videos unveiled Mercer's sick obsession with dominance and suffering. The manhunt for Mercer spanned across regions, a pursuit driven by the need to stop a predator who thrived on inflicting pain. Upon his capture, Mercer maintained a facade of tranquility, a facade shattered by the mounting evidence against him. The trial unveiled Mercer's elaborate charade of death and deception, his twisted desire to torment and destroy those who crossed his path. Emma's body was never recovered, lost to the confines of a closet where her cries for help went unanswered. As the gavel fell, sealing Mercer's fate with a life sentence, a sense of closure settled over the courtroom. Lynette Porter stood tall, a beacon of resilience in the face of darkness. "While he rots in his cell, I'll bask in the light," she proclaimed. The case reshaped investigative procedures, emphasizing the importance of scrutinizing relationships and rental histories in missing persons cases. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment, a stark reminder that true horror isn't always painted in blood, but etched in the desperate struggle for survival. Story 23. In the attic of the old house, a hidden box lay buried beneath years of forgotten clutter. Among the faded Polaroids inside, documenting mundane moments of joy and togetherness, there was one that stood out. A photo of a family, not Rebecca's own, smiling in her living room, unaware of the ominous figure lurking in the shadows behind them. As Rebecca gazed at the eerie image, a shiver ran down her spine and her fingers trembled, disturbing the stillness of the photograph. The resemblance between her house and the scene captured in the Polaroid was striking, yet the family in the picture remained strangers to her. Descending the creaking stairs, she brought the photo to the kitchen, under the harsh glare of fluorescent light. Detective Morgan, with his weathered leather jacket and piercing gaze, arrived to investigate. Delving into the house's history, they uncovered a chilling pattern of families disappearing after precisely 1 year of residency. The trail led back to Samuel Whitfield, the architect of the house, who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Forensic analysis of the photographs and the discovery of hidden chambers in the attic revealed a sinister truth. Whitfield had been observing and capturing each family's life before their sudden disappearance. Beneath the house, the missing families were found, perfectly preserved in the earth, along with the camera that had taken the haunting photos. Rebecca, now under police protection, received a disturbing call in the dead of night, signaling that the dark presence of Samuel Whitfield was still at large. The house, now a crime scene, held onto its secrets, with Whitfield's true fate remaining unresolved. The man in the shadows continued his twisted game, unseen yet ever watchful, as new families unknowingly stepped into his trap. The chilling legacy of the house lingered, a reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed, as the echoes of the past whispered through its empty halls, waiting for the next unwitting resident to uncover its dark history. Story 24. The ancient apartment held its secrets, pipes that groaned, floorboards that whispered, but the new tenant sensed a difference in the sounds that echoed through the walls. The footsteps were too deliberate, too precise. They echoed from above, slow and measured, yet she resided on the highest floor. One evening she mustered the courage to tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. Silence enveloped the room. Then a solitary knock resounded from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the knocking episode to herself, attributing it to the settling of the building or perhaps a small creature exploring the attic space. Despite the nightly footsteps continuing, she adapted, raising the volume of her television, wearing headphones to bed, anything to drown out the rhythmic footfalls that traversed her ceiling in the darkness. Detective Morris was alerted to the apartment's bizarre occurrences when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. Removing a section of drywall in the hallway outside Sarah's unit to address a water leak, the worker uncovered a narrow passageway that defied the building plans. Illuminated by his flashlight, the crawlspace revealed a makeshift living area, discarded food wrappers, empty water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small notebook. The building superintendent promptly contacted the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker visibly shaken. "Someone's been dwelling in the walls," he repeated. "Someone's been observing." Within the notebook were meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routine, her visitors, her meals, her TV preferences, her bathing times, her sleep patterns. The neat handwriting gradually deteriorated into erratic scrawls, with strange symbols adorning the margins. "The subject disregards my signals now," read the final entry. "She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams meticulously combed the crawlspace, uncovering fingerprints that matched no known records. They unearthed an intricate network of passages embedded in the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades based on structural analysis. These passages linked to 5 different units, leading to observation points disguised as fixtures or minor damages, with only one endpoint: Sarah Coleman's apartment. Interviewing current residents yielded no unusual reports beyond typical apartment noises. However, former tenants shared unsettling encounters. 3 previous occupants of Sarah's unit recounted feeling watched or hearing unexplained movements. One tenant had swiftly relocated after a mere 2 weeks, each hesitating to voice their experiences, fearing they would be dismissed as paranoid ramblings. The breakthrough in the investigation occurred when forensics detected microscopic blood spatter in one of the crawl spaces. DNA analysis identified the blood as belonging to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished mysteriously 4 years prior. Although his family had filed a missing persons report, the case had grown cold. Martin had resided in the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance. A According to neighbors, Martin had complained about noises emanating from above his unit. He had confronted the resident living upstairs, a reserved man named Edward who kept to himself. Subsequently, Martin vanished, and Edward departed the following month, leaving no forwarding details. A pattern emerged as investigators traced Edward's rental history. He had resided in 6 distinct apartment complexes over 2 decades, consistently choosing top-floor units, maintaining minimal social ties, and disappearing without notice. A neighbor from Edward's 3rd residence recalled him as intense, expressing his need for silence frequently. Property records disclosed that Edward had acquired isolated rural land. Upon reaching the location, authorities uncovered a cabin adorned with photos and notes. The images depicted residents from various apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Detailed maps of ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities were present, along with journals chronicling observations of the specimens and sustaining the habitat. Central to the cabin stood a corkboard showcasing newspaper clippings, missing persons reports, 6 in total. All were former residents of buildings where Edward had resided. Beneath the board, deep scratches scarred the wooden floor, suggesting a heavy object had been dragged repeatedly. Behind the cabin, cadaver dogs led investigators to disturbed earth. As excavation progressed, human remains emerged, first one grave, then another, and another. While forensic experts labored to identify the victims, Detective Morris revisited Sarah's apartment complex. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed off, residents occasionally reported peculiar noises. During the installation of upgraded security systems, maintenance workers discovered a small notebook tucked into a corner where the ceiling met the wall, a newer discovery than the initial one. The first page bore a single line: "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The handwriting mirrored that of the prior notebook. The final page displayed a crude sketch of Sarah's apartment layout, highlighting a new passage in red along with a date for that very night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to find her unit deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter, the television humming softly, the shower running. In the steam-fogged bathroom mirror, a message materialized, etched by a finger: "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The search for Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist in renovations, persists. His expertise in building structures facilitated the creation of hidden observation points and passages. Thermal imaging scans of Sarah's building revealed no signs of current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains missing, her case intertwined with disappearances spanning multiple states. Authorities have cautioned apartment managers regarding unauthorized alterations in concealed spaces. Amidst the haunting memories of graves, journals, and unsuspecting faces, Detective Morris is troubled by the image of Sarah, listening to those footsteps above her in an empty upstairs apartment. The footsteps that ceased when she knocked, and then responded. At times, in the quiet of his home at night, Detective Morris finds himself gazing up at his ceiling, listening intently, waiting, wondering who else might be listening alongside him. Story 25. In the attic, tucked away beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with eyes of painted blue gazing wide and unwavering. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, couldn't recall ever seeing it before. They dismissed it with a laugh, a mere forgotten relic of the past. But that night, a subtle unease settled in as they retired to bed. The air grew heavy, the silence stretched thin. And come morning, the doll had vanished from the attic, now perched at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the allure of the Victorian house they purchased at auction, the intricate woodwork, the enigmatic charm, oblivious to the whispers of its troubled history. Little did they know they would soon become entwined in its enigmatic narrative. Detective Rachel Winters, on a crisp autumn morning, received the call. The scene she encountered was chilling. The female victim posed in a contorted manner in the master bedroom, eyes wide with a frozen terror. Nearby, the male victim seemed as if he had been trying to flee. No signs of forced entry, no struggle evident beyond those final moments. As Detective Winters meticulously documented the scene, a haunting realization dawned. The female victim appeared arranged, akin to a doll plucked from a display. The investigation unfolded with interviews of neighbors, each account weaving a thread of disquiet into the tapestry of the case. Fibers were discovered throughout the house, vintage fabrics, akin to those used in antique doll attire, most prevalent around the victims and the attic. The absence of fingerprints, foreign DNA, or displaced footprints baffled the forensic team. It was as though the perpetrator had never physically intruded. Delving into the property's history unraveled a sinister pattern: 3 previous owners meeting mysterious fates under the roof's shadow. Stories emerged of antique toys appearing out of thin air, of phantom footsteps in empty corridors. A faded newspaper clipping led Detective Winters to a doll maker who once dwelled in the house with his deceased daughter. Suspicion lingered over the child's demise, the father's eerie creations, and a final doll, a perfect replica of his lost daughter. A doll missing from the inventory list of Sarah and Michael's purchase. The breakthrough materialized with old photographs unveiling the doll maker's eerie collection, one doll mirroring the one discovered by Sarah and Michael. Infrared scans divulged tiny handprints and an enigmatic residue trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, a macabre path woven of porcelain dust and enigmatic organic remnants. An enigmatic encounter with a distant relative unearthed whispers of arcane rituals binding spirits to objects, infusing life into crafted simulacrums. The investigation hit a dead end, shrouded in enigmas devoid of tangible suspects. Detective Winters retained the doll for evidence, safeguarding it within a secure cabinet, only to find it vanish the following morning, her memory a foggy void. The house exchanged hands once more, its grim history eclipsing its architectural grandeur. The new owners discovered the attic bare, save for a solitary blanket nestled in a corner. The doll remained elusive as the deaths of Sarah and Michael faded into the annals of unsolved mysteries whispered about in the precinct's corridors. Detective Winters retired prematurely, concealing a photograph of the dollmaker's collection in an envelope marked "Never Open." The new occupants opted to leave the attic undisturbed, yet whispers persisted on moonlit nights of a spectral presence behind the attic window, of a childlike laughter echoing through the stillness. Story 26. The old apartment exuded a sense of history, whispers of past lives lingering in the air. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled, creating a symphony of familiar sounds that blended into the fabric of the building, or so she thought, until that fateful moment when a voice, soft and insistent, drifted through the vents like a ghostly echo. It wasn't the typical noise of neighbors or the building settling. It was a whisper calling her name with a haunting allure. Intrigued, she leaned in closer, her heart quickening with a mix of curiosity and unease. A cool breath brushed against her cheek, followed by the playful words, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the center of the empty apartment, a silent witness to the eerie atmosphere that enveloped the space. Her keen eyes focused on the rusted vent cover, a gateway to the mysteries that unfolded within. The forensics team moved around her with precision, capturing every detail with their cameras as if preserving a moment frozen in time. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had left behind a void that led to a chilling discovery. Officer Patel recited his notes, recounting Alina's claims of voices from the vents that had gone unheeded by the building management. Shaw knelt by the vent, tracing the desperate marks etched around its edges. They were not mere scratches, but a frantic plea for escape, a testament to a struggle that had taken place in silence, from inside the vent. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher, had lived a life filled with warmth and kindness, now overshadowed by the darkness that had consumed her. Her disappearance had left a trail of unanswered questions, her once vibrant existence reduced to whispers in the walls. Shaw listened to the accounts of Alina's paranoia, her fear of unseen eyes watching her every move, speaking to her through the unseen conduits of the apartment. As Shaw delved deeper into the investigation, the apartment revealed its secrets in subtle whispers and hidden truths. Fibers entwined in the vents, a mysterious fingerprint, and audio recordings that painted a chilling picture of a presence lurking in the shadows. The building itself held a history of occupants who had fled, their stories intertwined with the sinister undercurrents that pulsed through the walls. Harold Weber, the enigmatic building superintendent, emerged as a central figure in the unfolding drama. His calm exterior belied a darkness that Shaw sensed lurking beneath the surface. The discovery of a hidden passage connected to Alina's apartment hinted at a malevolent force that had been watching, waiting, and whispering. The search of Weber's apartment unearthed a trove of unsettling revelations, audio recordings, voyeuristic images, and a digital diary that chronicled his obsession with Alina. The pieces of a twisted puzzle began to fall into place, painting a portrait of a man consumed by a macabre fantasy that blurred the lines between reality and delusion. Weber's arrest marked the end of a nightmare that had gripped the building in its icy embrace. His words, spoken with a chilling certainty, echoed in Shaw's mind as she watched him being led away. The whispers that had once haunted the walls now faded into a distant memory, a reminder of the darkness that could lurk within the most unassuming of places. The apartment building now stands as a silent sentinel, its walls holding secrets that refuse to be forgotten. Residents come and go, oblivious to the whispers that linger in the air, the echoes of a past that still reverberate through the halls. The building remembers, the voices never truly silenced, a haunting reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the shadows that dwell within. And so the old apartment continues to breathe, its secrets buried deep within its walls, waiting to be heard by those who dare to listen. Story 27. She entered through the front door, stirring up dust in the stagnant air. The once abandoned house stood frozen in time, with peeling walls and furniture draped in sheets. Every step felt like a journey back to the same moment except for the doors. No matter which one she opened, they all led back to the parlor, a perplexing maze of familiarity. Retracing her path, the front door she entered through had vanished. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's body elevated the deserted Victorian from a mere curiosity to a crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind observed the forensic team moving silently through the dimness, resembling phantoms in the stillness. The house had gained a reputation among locals for its eerie phenomena, compasses spinning out of control, whispers of being watched. Now, it held secrets far more sinister than mere folklore. Preliminary findings suggest she passed 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured. Asphyxiation seems to be the cause of death. Morgan was found seated in an old chair in the parlor, facing the entrance as if expecting someone. Her expression serene, hands neatly folded in her lap. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. The scene exuded a haunting tranquility that unsettled even the seasoned investigators. Lind inquired who discovered the body. Her partner replied, a real estate agent showing the property stumbled upon her, mistaking her for a trespasser at first glance. Since the death of the previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, the house had remained uninhabited for nearly 5 years, lost in legal disputes and forgotten by many except for vandals and thrill-seekers. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, was described by friends as meticulous, driven, and captivated by spaces that challenged traditional design. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days back, Lind noted. Morgan mentioned investigating the house where people get lost for her research. Investigation unveiled Morgan's frequent visits to the house in the weeks leading to her demise. Her journal entries detailed peculiar acoustics, sudden cold spots, and doors that led to different places with each opening. In her final entry, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to document what she referred to as spatial inconsistencies. Yet that equipment was nowhere to be found. The autopsy disclosed an unexpected detail traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant used in shamanic rituals. The substance could induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, but wasn't present in lethal amounts. She wasn't into recreational drugs, her boyfriend affirmed during questioning. Morgan was meticulous about her research. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perceptions willingly. Deleted messages retrieved from Morgan's phone unveiled conversations with a kindred spirit intrigued by the house, someone who claimed to comprehend its enigmas. Their exchanges grew increasingly intimate and enigmatic. The house holds memories, one message revealed. It yearns for acknowledgement. The trail led detectives to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian in contact with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena captivated her, evolving their professional rapport into a personal connection. Reeves expressed genuine sorrow upon her demise. The house carries a legacy, he explained. The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design, intending to bewilder and confound. Morgan sensed a deeper significance, something beyond mere tricks of architecture. However, Reeves had a solid alibi for the presumed time of death, backed by security footage of him lecturing at a university symposium hours away. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, residing overseas. When approached by investigators, he unveiled a long-held family secret. My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish in that house, he divulged. Others suffered a similar fate, always found in the parlor, always appearing serene. The family termed it the claiming. Furnishing investigators with journals spanning decades, he chronicled deaths initially attributed to heart failure or stroke. The pattern was unmistakable. Individuals spending considerable time in the house succumbed to what the family euphemistically dubbed the influence. Further exploration of the property exposed a concealed compartment behind the parlor fireplace. Within lay Morgan's missing equipment, and something more: a small chamber housing artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, arranged meticulously in a geometric layout. At its core resided a weathered figurine embodying a deity associated with liminal space's transitional realms. Traces of the alkaloid discovered in Morgan's system were detected on the artifacts. The case took a darker turn, with forensic analysis revealing an unidentified presence in the house at the time of Morgan's passing. Unmatched partial fingerprints were lifted from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was found lifeless in his apartment. Mirroring Morgan's posture, his countenance peaceful, with the same alkaloid in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key unmatching any lock in his abode, but fitting precisely into the hidden compartment in the Victorian. In his final correspondence sent to himself as a testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't imprison you physically. It ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct. The doors lead where they've always led, yet something tricks you into believing you're trapped in circles. Once you grasp the truth, departure is within reach. However, by then, the desire to leave fades. The case remains officially unresolved, categorized as suspicious fatalities under scrutiny. The Victorian has been condemned, its access restricted by authorities. Yet whispers persist of lights flickering within on certain nights and of visitors vanishing without a trace. Some locals assert the house claims those who delve too deeply into its enigmatic depths. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves unearthed a potent and age-old force lingering in the interstices of conventional reality. The verity remains as elusive as an exit in a house where every door leads back to the beginning.